Well, welcome here. Bonjour. Good day. Welcome to the Grey Cup. We are live here. Hopefully, the audio works. Let me know if we have anything. If anyone can't hear, if it sounds weird. Running this off, we are live here at the BC Lions Den. Evan, Jason, how are you guys? Jason, Hussey, Evan, what's going on?
Not too much. Really excited for the Grey Cup. Not used to holding the mic, but yeah, really excited to be here in Hamilton. And yeah.
Evan, how's it going? Made it out late last night.
Yeah, doing very well. Honestly, just glad to be here. There was a minute where I thought it might not be happening, but we're here doing the show now, getting ready for Grey Cup tomorrow, and very exciting time.
Yeah, so we are live here today, Saturday, at the BC Lions Den. I'm adjusting my microphone a little bit here, running on the fly. Going to have a huge slate of guests. We're going to do an intro. We got Jamie and I standing by. Dorothy's running the floor. We got people shifting, sliding. You know how it is, but we'll have lots of guests today. 2 hours here coming up. First off, Jason, obviously we had Hamilton Grey Cup 2 years ago. A little different than now. What's it like here? We're on the floor. We're here. They got the Schooner band playing, everything else. What's it being like on the floor here?
Well, it's night and day compared to what it was in 2021 because 2021 was a very scaled back Grey Cup. Obviously, you had a lot of COVID protocols still in place. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it wasn't the Grey Cup that Hamilton really envisioned. But this year, they've been able to really pull out all the stops, and they have a lot of events going on throughout the city.
Evan, what's it like? We're walking around today downtown. We're the convention center, pretty buzzing. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think Hamilton's great. It's a pretty cozy city. I didn't really know what to expect. I've never been out to this part of Canada before, really only been to Vancouver, but it's a pleasant surprise so far. And the weather's also been great, which I wasn't totally anticipating. So enjoying that as well.
Yeah, it's been beautiful. Really surprised here. Just looking to see if I'm getting any DMs from guests. Really beautiful. We want to get into the game here before we get everyone else in. Exciting. I know this isn't kind of the Grey Cup maybe we thought we wanted coming in, but obviously here with Montreal, the big upset. Jason, first thoughts to you. What are you looking for? I know we did the preview show on Monday or Tuesday, whenever that was, but what are you making of the actual game here?
I think all eyes have to be on Winnipeg's offense versus Montreal's defense because, I mean, I haven't really seen too much from the Montreal offense to believe that they can win, a shootout type game this year. And if Winnipeg's offense gets rolling, I don't think that Montreal has the capability to keep up with them. But I think Montreal's defense is playing so well right now. If they can replicate what they did against Toronto last week and ultimately force turnovers, I think they can, get an upset in the Grey Cup on Sunday.
It's so funny. We were talking at breakfast before. Every Winnipeg reporter that's here, there's not a chance in hell that Winnipeg loses this game. Obviously, we have the Montreal guys. They feel this, but I think both sides feel pretty confident right now. I don't know. I think Toronto came in last year maybe with more. I feel like Montreal has more questions this year coming in than Toronto did. Evan, what do you make of this from a football perspective?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've really been focused on here is, while this is Winnipeg's fourth straight Grey Cup, they're no strangers here. They've got a lot of guys that are getting older. I mean, just going down the list, you've got Zach Caleros, who's 35, Stanley Bryant, who's 37, Jamarcus Hardrick, who's 33, was a finalist for most outstanding lineman, Willie Jefferson, Jackson Jeffcoat, both 32, and then Adam Bighill, who, may or may not play in this game, is 35. Still a very, pivotal player there in Winnipeg. So, this team's getting older, even though they've been here many times and they've obviously, won twice out of the past three. They if they don't get this one, there might be some significant change. And obviously still a lot of good players, that they recruit very well. Shout out to Danny McManus and all those guys in the front office. But this definitely feels like, almost not end of a run, but it's not youthful anymore.
It's weird. In terms of the Montreal side of it, and I was talking with Gary Stern, obviously a former owner here over the weekend, following that really weird Montreal's trajectory this year, and it seems like they never stopped at working and acquiring talent right during the offseason. Jason, is that kind of how you look at that? That they've kind of continued to ascend here, where obviously we saw the bizarreness with Toronto here last weekend, but it really feels like Montreal is peaking at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe they've won 6 or 7 games in a row leading into this game. So they're arguably the most hot team in the CFL going into this Grey Cup game here. But I think, at the end of the day, they were kind of behind the 8 ball in the offseason with the whole ownership situation being up in the air. But ultimately, they got that straightened out. I think that they made a lot of smart free agent acquisitions. I always say that on my channel that the quarterback situation could have ended up so much worse for them, given that Trevor Harris left during free agency this year. So I think that Cody Fajardo's kind of steadied the ship for the Alouettes in that regard. And Jason Moss deserves a lot of credit as well.
Yeah, just tremendous here. I mean, Evan, and we've talked about this for weeks. Like, this could have been a disaster of a season for Montreal coming in. And obviously, you have the ownership change. And it was funny. We were at Randy Ambrosie's public address yesterday to the fans. And he's talking about how Pierre came in and bought the team. I said, how crazy would it be coming in your first year here? A lot to go down from there, kind of a high rise. But really just incredible how Montreal has really defied the odds this season.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the expectations were pretty low, and the one consistent criticism that they weren't able to overcome during the season was, they were unable to beat what would be considered the upper echelon of teams in the CFL, the Torontos, the Winnipegs, the BCs, the world. And when they came into the playoffs, even against Hamilton, who had their struggles, there was a lot of doubt, just given, again, their flow of the season. But they've proved everybody wrong so far. Offense, still has some work to do. We can get into that. But the defense has just been incredible, and I'm really excited to see that unit in person this weekend. Or tomorrow, I should say.
Yeah, I want to talk more kind of broad range in CFL, and we'll get a lot of guests in, but I want to make sure we get enough talk on the game here before we kind of spiral the rest of this today. Jason, you said at breakfast you want just a good game. Is that enough? Like, what are you actually expecting here between these teams?
I'm expecting a low-scoring game between these two teams because, as I said in my game preview this week for this game, they are the top two scoring defenses in the CFL this season. So I'm very much excited to see which defense really shows up to play in this one. Also, the top two pass defenses in the CFL this season. So it'll be interesting to see which offense really gets going in this game.
It's been interesting to me, and I was having a conversation last night with a lot of the Winnipeg and other reporters in the suite here, talking about the importance of Winnipeg here winning and really cementing Collaros and Mike O'Shea and all of that, and what that would mean to go to win 3 Grey Cups, right, 4 years, kind of all that stuff, versus kind of the fluky upset kind of underdog stories Montreal. Is there one that's more appealing to you between the two?
Well, it's tough, because Winnipeg has gone to 4 straight Grey Cups, like I've already pointed out. They won the first 2, but then they lost last year in a very tight contest. And then this year, even though, again, it's their 4th straight, it's still a big year. Like I pointed out, some of the key players on their roster are older, we'll see what happens. But I think, it's definitely going to be, if Winnipeg wins the game, I think a lot of people will, come out and say, well, that was expected. They're just a better team all around, better roster. You could argue better coaching to a degree. I mean, Jason Moss is the first. This is the first year coaching, right? But if Montreal wins, then Winnipeg loses back-to-back Grey Cups. That's going to raise some eyes. Is the team getting too old? Are you going to have to make some changes? And I think those are all things to consider.
Yeah. What do you view the window here, Jason?
For Winnipeg?
Yeah.
I think they still maybe have 1 or 2 more years left. But like Evan said, a lot of these guys, especially in the trenches, are getting older for them. You think about the offensive line, left tackle, right tackle. They're both over 33, 34 years old. Stanley Bryan, I believe, is 36 or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, 37. So, these guys are getting older at like premium positions. So, they'll still have Zach Collaros for, I think, the next 5 or so years. But I think that at the end of the day, if the offensive line play starts to deteriorate and if, Willie Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat aren't getting after the quarterback as much as they used to, I think that you could see a really big decline with this team.
Is my boy Cody Fajardo, is he in trouble tomorrow, Evan? Like, is he? I'm worried for Cody a little bit here.
Well, it's a good question. Again, I've talked about, Willie Jefferson being one of my favorite players in the CFL with his length and that, pass rush that really affected Vernon Adams in that West final. He couldn't get the ball out. And, I definitely think, given – Montreal's offense, I think, is the most concerning unit in this game, on all sides of the ball of both teams. Is Cody in trouble? I don't know. He's been a very good game manager this year, but he really needs to step up and make some big plays in this game. There's no doubt. And I think a lot of those big plays, are going to have to go to Austin Mack, who, really rose to the top this year, from Ohio State, been with a couple NFL teams, but really rose to the top quickly. And that's going to have to be his guy in this one. They're going to have to, get it going early because I was saying this morning at breakfast, once Collaros gets rolling in that offense, even if they might be down Dalton Schoen, you've still got Kenny Lawler, you still got Rasheed Bailey, and those guys, could go out there and they can make that game, a blowout really quickly. It's a frightening offense.
Matt's got a question here. Can the Owls keep it within 10 points? And then everyone wants to know what's Green Day going to open with. We'll get to that, but can the Owls keep – I want Montreal. This is a pro Montreal Alouettes. This is a pro Cody Fajardo podcast. Do you think that they're even going to keep it closer?
I think it'll be a close game. Like I said, I think it'll be lower scoring, but we have seen some major upsets in the Grey Cup game in the last 10 years even. You look at even last year was a pretty big upset considering what Winnipeg went into that game with. You think about Ottawa playing against Calgary in 2016. Ottawa was an 8-9-1 team, and they beat the 15-2-1 Stampeders. So anything can happen in the Grey Cup game, as history shows.
Janet checking in here. Good afternoon from Southern California. Let's talk about this. We have a question. Sandusky, I don't understand why the CFL hasn't pushed Austin Mack because of the Ohio State University aspect of it. We've talked to Austin Mack all season. Do you think the CFL needs to be doing more to promote him?
Maybe, I mean, he came from a big school, right? But at the end of the day, he still has to come up here and make a name for himself, right? I mean, one of the misconceptions sometimes in the CFL game is that you have these Americans that come up from big schools, and they think that they're automatically going to get a spot. Keep in mind, Austin Mack, no one really expected this from him. He was pretty low in that Montreal depth chart. Again, there just wasn't a lot of expectation. So I think they've done a decent job at promoting him. He's done very well this season. I've talked about him at nauseum, so I'm trying not to talk about him too much here. But, he's a great player, and hopefully he can continue to do great things in Montreal, whether they win the Grey Cup tomorrow or not.
Jason, any other thoughts on the game itself? We'll bring Jamie in here. I see him standing by. Anything else on the game itself? We'll circle back here throughout some other stuff. Anything else you want to make sure you get to?
Yeah, I think injuries is something I'm looking forward to in this game, or not looking forward to, but keeping my eye out for in this game, because Montreal very healthy, like barely anybody on the injury report for them. Everybody was practicing this week, but for Winnipeg, a couple of key guys probably out for this game. Adam Bighill, like we were talking about before we got on here, probably not going to play in this game. Dalton Schoen, probably not going to play in this game. Didn't play last week in the West Final. So if those two guys aren't playing for Winnipeg, I think you're going to see Montreal try to attack the middle of that defense with the run. William Stanback could have a big game with Bighill not being there in the middle. And then on the other side of the ball, if Schoen's out, I think, Kenny Lawler is going to have to play a big role like he did last week in the West Final.
Well, and we talked here even before, and I keep saying at breakfast, but, talking here this morning about Winnipeg not looking necessarily dominant in the BC win last week, where, I want to get into the Chad Kelly concussion syndrome of it all today here. We'll do that. But, Evan, here we're like Montreal it feels like a lot of steamroll here going in compared to kind of Winnipeg. And obviously, they still took care of BC in kind fashion. But you know what I'm saying? It feels like Montreal's got a little more juice.
Sure. Well, I'm going to use this time. So we've talked about Darnell Sankey, Sean Lemon, these high-impact players that Montreal brought in, towards the end of their season that have really given them a boost here in the playoffs. But there's a couple other Montreal defenders that I want to talk about briefly, that maybe you can look out for tomorrow in the game if you're watching this show. Kavion Ento, who played 4 seasons with the Green Bay Packers, is first-year CFL player. He played receiver at Colorado, then switched to DB. He's come along very quickly this CFL season. Again, kind of a late bloomer, didn't really start doing much till July. And then the other guy is Reggie Stubblefield, who was Montreal's most outstanding rookie nominee, former DC defender in the XFL this season. He didn't catch on until late either. I think he might have been cut and then brought back on the practice roster. But he had an outstanding season. Again, those guys in the secondary really helping out Marc-Antoine Dequoy, who, had a pivotal pick 6 in that Eastern final last week.
Let's bring Jamie. You ready to come on here? Let's bring Jamie in here. Do you want to come around this way? We'll bring in Jamie Nye, Green Zone, everything Saskatchewan. Try not to kill yourself here. Come here. Jamie coming in here. Jamie and I appreciate it. We were talking in the FRC suite and all of that, hanging out. What is the biggest thing you're tracking this week outside of the game? We got the Chad Kelly of it all. We've got the logos on the field. We've got the game not being broadcast on TV in America. What are you ready for?
Well, this week I've been under the who the heck's the next head coach of the Saskatchewan Roughriders investigation on what's going on with the coaching search. And I do know they have started at least the process to start requesting who they're going to talk to for some of the teams that are out of the playoffs right now. That's like, Scott Milenovich, Brent Monson out of Calgary as well. Mark Killam out of Calgary is another one. Jordan McSimic of the BC Lions, those types of people. And then wait. Because they're going to have to wait until after the Grey Cup to, go after Buck Pierce and maybe Noel Thorpe of the Montreal Alouettes. And Buck Pierce, of course, the offensive coordinator of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So it's been interesting trying to keep track on who's talking to who Grey Cup week.
Yeah, Jason, we talked, Saskatchewan and kind of the dumpster fire with all there. What are we looking for? What do you have for Jamie?
I was going to ask about Winnipeg. So if Winnipeg wins this game, where do they rank among all-time CFL teams?
Well, making 4 straight, when you look at it, outside of, you had the Edmonton Eskimos back in the day, made it to 4 straight. Then you had Hamilton in like the early 60s, make it to 4 straight. And the Regina Rough Riders when it was rugby. That was the other team so just making it to 4 straight Grey Cups is unheard of. So you have that. And then if they win and they win 3 of 4, you put them as one of the greatest teams of all time. They're not the Edmonton team that won 5 straight, but they're getting pretty darn close to what they've been able to accomplish. And it's been fascinating to watch this team do it, because there was a time when there was some patience running thin on Mike O'Shea and Kyle Walters way back in the day. And then all of a sudden they turned the corner, started winning games. The dominoes fell the right way with Zach Collaros, and here we are. And the dynasty word is fair. And it's the debate is, if they lose, can you still call them a dynasty? I think they have to win for the to be a 3 of 4 rather than 2 of 4.
Yeah, Evan, what do you think? And then carry on from there.
Well, actually, I had a question about the coaching search in Saskatchewan. So I just wanted to get your opinion on, who might be the best fit, because Scott Milanovich, who I really like, has been a name that's been floated around. Obviously, you pointed that out. Jordan Maximic here in BC is someone that, I've been a big fan of his work. But who do you think would be the best candidate there?
Well, it depends what you want. Do you want the safest hire? That's Scott Milanovich, because he's been there, done that. You know what he can bring to the table. Or do you want to do a Mike O'Shea type person who was a special teams coordinator, successful, and then kind of grow with them as a coach to maybe have something more longer term potentially? And that's where I think you lean over to Buck Pierce, because sorry, people are playing Django over there if you heard what that was. But it's one of those things where you look at culture. I'm a big believer in finding someone from a winning culture who knows how to grow it. That's why Buck Pierce really appeals to me, because of what he's seen in Winnipeg. But Scott Milanovich is the safest, most experienced. But I want the guy who blows Jeremy O'Day away. That's who I really want. And we don't know who that's going to be until the interview process goes down and they present a coaching staff that you go, that's the guy.
Understood.
But I imagine Scott Milanovich will have, with all his connections, be able to come up with a heck of a coaching staff for the Riders.
Well, because I saw a comment even today that they were looking for, it needs to be someone that fits the Saskatchewan culture. And they said, no, I think it needs someone to come in here and rebuild a new culture, because clearly what they have right now isn't working.
Well, what's the Saskatchewan culture when you've won 4 Grey Cups in 110 years? Like, no, serious. Do you want the guy who believes in that? No, you want a guy who's going to win 3 Grey Cups in 4 years is what you're looking for. That's the culture you want. So I want a guy who can build a culture and not the Saskatchewan way or the Edmonton way or the Bomber way. Make it your own and have the group in the room believe in that. So that's where I'd be going.
How dysfunctional is the kind of the franchise now with all of this? And you were on the show near the end of the season talking, and they're gonna even they're gonna lose their way out of the playoffs. Fire the coach, kind of all that stuff. Like, what is kind of the welfare check on everything in Regina?
Well, everybody's pointing the finger at now Craig Dickinson, right? Like, it's clear he is the guy you look at. Even this week, talking to Cody Fajardo, talking to Jason Moss, talking to Darnell Sankey about 2022, not necessarily 2023, of course, but it sounded like it was an absolute gong show in that locker room, especially when they made the decision to bench Cody. And you go, how do you continue it on forward with Craig for an extra year for 2023? And guess what happened? The exact same thing played out. So that's where I can understand where Rider Nation is coming back on even questioning bringing Jeremy O'Day back for 3 years as the general manager. Do you really have faith in that guy to make the right hire? I would like to think he can. He's been around the league forever. And when Chris Jones bolted, he was pretty much had to pick Craig Dickinson. Then they go to back-to-back West Finals. So it's been 2 up years, 2 down years for the Rough Riders, and Jeremy O'Day's. This is the most crucial thing he has to do in his entire career as assistant general manager, everything else. Right now, this is it for Jeremy O'Day. He's got to get it right.
Jason, we joked a lot meanly kind of joked about, Saskatchewan here watching Jason Moss and Cody, go to the Grey Cup here. I want to get your thoughts on that. And then obviously Jamie about, here they were the scapegoats last year, kind of sent out of town packing. And now obviously everything. What are your thoughts? And then we'll get Jamie.
Yeah, it's an incredible story what the Montreal Alouettes have gone through this year with obviously Moss and Fajardo. I think that at the end of the day, they've just been just like kind of a Cinderella story, really, because I had them dead last in the CFL standings at the beginning of the season. So, they've definitely proved me wrong. I think, I've definitely underestimated Jason Moss as a head coach, because I think that when you look back in hindsight, he did a pretty good job in Edmonton. Like, you look at what that team's become since he was fired in 2019. Just quite a difference for that organization. So
we'll give credit to Jason Moss. Jason Moss, the one thing I very much appreciate in talking to him was when he was in Edmonton, they were one of the most undisciplined teams in the Canadian Football League. And it was because he looked at himself and went, how disciplined was I on the sideline, throwing headsets, smashing Gatorade bottles? Like, how can I expect my team to play disciplined when I can't even control myself? And he still tips the line, dances on that line pretty close at times, but he's not throwing things anymore. Like, he's looked at himself on how can I grow as a person. And it was interesting talking to Danny Machocha this week and said, Danny said not glad that he went through what he did in Saskatchewan, but watching him go through what he did in Saskatchewan, come through it, grow from it, learn internally from it, he believed in Jason Moss even more to hire him as the head coach of the Montreal Alouettes. So that's the big credit to Jason on the growth as a head coach. And with Cody, it's not like he's blowing the world away in his play. Like, it is a strong defense he's got. But what Cody's doing is he's not trying to be the hero every down like it seemed like he was at times when it was going off the rails in Saskatchewan, trying to be the guy that pushes the team forward. He understands he's just one piece. He's a big piece, but one piece of the puzzle in Montreal. And it's paid off in these playoffs. He's made 2 bad throws. They've both been intercepted. Thankfully, he didn't go for pick sixes in Montreal's way. But that's where Cody's at. I expect him in this game to actually use his legs more and not dance around, but if Adam Bighill doesn't play, attack Shane Gauthier up the middle on some QB draw stuff to really, and probably test him early to see where Gauthier's game's at in what's going to be the biggest game of his career.
Well, Evan, I was having one of the conversations I could have been with Jamie. Someone over the weekend was talking like Jason Moss, like you said, kind of getting the best of Cody now and maybe not making him have the long ball down the field, push it, be a little bit more ding and dunk. What do you make of how Jason's been using Cody here? And then obviously we'll get.
Well, I think it's good to see Cody kind of step back and be in a bit more reserved role. He's letting other people on the team kind of figure things out. I mean, the big story about Montreal has been their defense, not the offense. Now, Montreal has several offensive pieces that I like. They've got Austin Mack, who I've talked about ad nauseum. They have Keon Julian Grant, a couple other guys there. Will stand back in the running game. So I'm just really happy to see, Cody's he doesn't have to play hero ball. I've kind of used the term game manager this season. I think he's more than that. He brings more to the table right there. I don't think that, they're in the Grey Cup for a reason, and Cody plays a significant role with that as the quarterback of the team. But yeah, I think, him and Jason are a great pairing. And Cody's talked about that. He's talked about what a great leader Jason's been for him. And it's really nice to see Jason too, because as we've already pointed out, those guys were kind of the scapegoats in Saskatchewan. They were made out to be the problem. And then here, Jason Moss is, in a Grey Cup against one of, the, I guess, dynasties, you could say, in the CFL. And Saskatchewan was right back where they were last year, where they had an end of the season slide. And, I don't want to bring too much of that up just to give you any PTSD. But hey, that's just what it is. It's one of those things where they proved a lot of people wrong. And we'll see if they continue to do that tomorrow.
We had a Twitter comment here. Why does this presentation look more professional than CFL on TSN? I appreciate that. I appreciate it. And nothing like an iPhone and a ring light here. What do you make here, Cody? Because there's been a lot of are they, I live in the States here. We've got the Brock Purdy and what's in the league quarterback and all that kind of stuff here. I mean, Cody's in the Grey Cup. I couldn't be more proud. What do you make of his play coming into this year now?
Well, me and Cody he blocked me on Twitter, right? So he knew what I was saying about him last year. And I'm not going to say that we were wrong about Cody Fajardo because, as I mentioned, it's not like he's lighting the world on fire at 31 touchdown passes. Like, his numbers are pretty well basically the same as they were with the Rough Riders last season. He's also got an exceptional defense surrounding him. So Danny Machocha has done a great job building that Montreal Alouette team and allowing Cody Fajardo to doesn't have to be all world to win football games. And Cody he's told me he's been off Twitter all year. That really got to him in Saskatchewan. Like I talked about Jason growing, that's a growth point for Cody. It was getting to him, hitting that mentions button and seeing how many people are down on you wore him down. So he said, I'm not going to do. It's all growth for both of those guys. That sometimes you build yourself up even stronger because you went through adversity than if you didn't. And I think that's what happened with Cody and Jason Moss. So I walked up to him at media day and I went right up to him and said, hey man, I was in Saskatchewan saying he's the quarterback who's never going to get a team to a Grey Cup. I was wrong. And he said, I appreciate that, man. And he said, thanks for picking us this week. So he's clearly not fully off social media if he knows I'm picking him this week.
What you needed to get on like I did and wait till he's traded to the team and then go through that and then get him on and kind of use that as a way. Before we get you out of here, we've talked so much and I want to get Jason's thoughts too. Kind of the work, Jason, that Montreal's done this year with Danny. We've talked to Sean Lemon and the Sankey and all of that. Jason, what do you make of kind of the offseason work that Montreal's done? And then we'll get Jamie. But because never giving up here, right? We're all like here, Sean Lemon floated around all these kind of things. What do you the work that Danny did?
Well, I'll even go even further back because a few years ago, Montreal, I would say, had the worst Canadian talent in the CFL. And just the pieces that they've been able to draft over the past couple of years. Look at Marc-Antoine Dequoy. They found guys on the offensive line like Pierre-Olivier Lestage. They got, some good Canadian receivers. I think that aspect of their team has really improved over the last couple of years. And I think that's a huge reason why they are where they are today. And I think that, at the end of the day, the Canadian talent is very important in this league.
Well, what Danny's done just on Canadian talent to build off that. I talked to Danny this week, and he said where they've really built their Canadian talent is building from within the borders of Quebec. Like you have two really good, strong programs in Quebec, plus the CEGEP programs there too, where there's a lot of Quebec talent, and if it's two guys are the same, he's taking the guy from Quebec all the time. And even within his coaching staff, he's building within Quebec and really believing in that Quebec culture. Like this is Quebec's team, even though it's a Montreal Alouettes. So I appreciate that from Danny Machocha's point of view on how he's built. Canadian talent has been great, and he's doing it. Like think about where they were with all the ownership stuff. Like he was losing his quarterback. He was losing his star receiver. He was losing linebacker. Like it was all over the place. Like a Darius Pickett, Eugene Lewis, and Trevor Harris right there. It's like, oh my goodness. But he also had extra money to sign Darnell Sankey and Sean Lemon midseason. The work Danny Machocha did this year, if there was an executive of the year at the CFL Awards, it should be Danny Machocha for what he's been able to pull off with the Montreal Alouettes.
Last question for you as I'm trying to figure out with our stage producer, Dorothy, here. We'll get her on at the end of the show. We figure out who wants to come on next. How much pressure is there on whoever comes into Saskatchewan now? I mean, here, right? They hosted last year, all of that stuff. Now, the fire. Like, what is the what's the timeline here you're expecting for when someone could potentially get hired, and then like how much pressures are now coming into next year?
For the
coach, people coming into Saskatchewan.
Oh my goodness, better win. Like you better win. This is a situation where the fan base they're not showing up to games anymore. Like 16,000 is back when the dog days of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, when I was a season ticket holder when I was a teenager, and you could sit anywhere. You can put your feet over the seats, you can relax, you can walk around, get the mini yellow footballs, all that stuff, ate a game because there's nobody else chasing them around when they got a field goal. So the pressure is immense on Craig Reynolds, the president, Jeremy O'Day, the general manager. The new coach, I think, can come in there and understand, it's win now, but I think there'd be more pressure on those above this head coach than there will be on the head coach. But I think there's a good base of talent there you can build around, but Jeremy's already there doing it. It's just a matter of figuring out, is Trevor Harris coming back at quarterback? And if not, who's going to throw the football around. You need a good one to win in this league. There's no doubt about that.
A lot of here. I think you have an exciting offseason ahead, Jamie. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. I'll see you at the suite later. We appreciate it.
Right on.
We'll bring Darrell in here. We got Darrell Davis coming in. He's drinking some water. We got Darrell. I had a comment here, Darrell. You can come around that way. Thanks, Jamie. I did see a comment here, and I want to talk more about this with Farhan and Naylor as well, about the CFL Plus, the Grey Cup, and kind of all of that stuff, because I do think that is quite the miss here that you have not an option with the biggest game of the CFL season here, to be on broadcast TV in any way. Evan and I were talking even before the stream about, God forbid, I'm channel surfing and I stumble upon it in my thing, but we'll get to that. Philip, you can CFLplus.ca. It's on there. It's free to watch. I just think there needs to be a better way to get more people on. Darrell here, we've spent the last couple nights in the FRC suite. Are you enjoying your Jordan Eberle bobblehead?
Well, thanks for the Jordan Eberle bobblehead. He's my former neighbor, right? So yeah, thank you for that. That was a really nice treat. I'll let you stay up until like 3 or 4 in the morning and hang out in the suite with me and keep me awake really late again. Like as always, Reed. Good to see you.
Darrell, what are you tracking this week? I guess let's get your thoughts on that. We got the CFL Plus. It's weird. Like, Rosh tweets it out. I'm like, this has been known since May that the game wasn't going to be on American TV. What do you make of that? I understand the CFL Plus and everyone, I saw Dave Campbell saying don't worry about it and Rod Peterson, but I think you need to have an option somewhere on broadcast TV, God forbid. But what do you make of CFL, the Grey Cup, not being available on American TV?
Well, you need to have access for people who want to watch it. Didn't it used to be on ESPN that you could watch it somewhere? And I know that everybody's going streaming these days. We're evolving, right? But how can you not have it on even a basic cable somewhere? Right? It's probably not going to be on a broadcast network. Of course not. But people want to watch it. And there are Canadians all over the world who'd like to pick it up. And it's going to be tough. If you're just streaming things, not everybody gets great reception on their stream. So I think that's a misstep on the CFL's part, but it's something hopefully they can fix.
What's the biggest storyline you're tracking this week? What do you want to talk about? It could be the game. It could be the non-bilingual stuff on the field. Like what are you tracking? And then we'll get some questions figured out.
Well, I'm really local because I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan, home of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And what's going on there? They need a coach, right? So here I am following guys. Scott Milanovich was Ottawa Hamilton's offensive coordinator. Obviously I believe the number one choice to become Saskatchewan's new head coach after they dumped Craig Dickinson. Noel Thorpe, the defense coordinator for Montreal, might be considered. Buck Pierce, I'm sure, is being considered as he's an offensive coordinator with Winnipeg. So those are the stories I'm working on mostly, Reed. I try to keep my stuff local. I know there's a lot of national stories, international. The French language thing is always something they have to be very careful of. It's not as noteworthy in Saskatchewan, but it certainly is with Montreal and in Quebec, and especially with the Montreal Alouettes participating in the Grey Cup game. You can't mess up things like that. You can't mess up like they did in the East Final and not have a bilingual singer singing the national anthem. That's just not the way it works in Canada.
Jason, did you, and we've talked Scott Milanovich and kind of all of this stuff, him with Hamilton, do you think he's done enough with the Ticats, even though, it may get to the playoffs, not winning, but did he do enough here with his resume?
I think that he did an okay job. I think the offense for Hamilton definitely did improve when he took over from Tommy Condell midway through this season. But I think the most important thing is the CFL teams, they value experience and previous experience being a head coach. And I think that more often than not, you see them rehire guys that have been head coaches before. They don't really you don't really see guys that haven't been a head coach before get an opportunity that often. So I think that is working in his favor more than anything.
What do you make of that, Darrell? The recycling of CFL. We saw Jason Mosco and get fired out of and getting ahead, but now, hey, he's in the Grey Cup.
Yeah, there are only 9 jobs, and Jason makes a good point because Jeremy O'Day, the Rough Riders general manager, is in a precarious spot. He got stuck with Craig Dickinson 5 years ago, because Chris Jones bolted for the NFL. So Craig Dickinson was the best coach on their staff, best coaching candidate on their staff. For 2 years, they made the Western Final and then missed the playoffs the last 2 years. So he needs to find somebody. I realize that Saskatchewan Rough Rider fans are furious that Jeremy O'Day got a 3-year contract extension, but they needed to give him 3 years so he can hire a good coach like Milanovich. And the reason why they don't recycle a lot of times, especially now, Jeremy O'Day can't afford to take a chance on somebody. He needs to find somebody who's proven. Scott Milanovich is proven. He's won a Grey Cup. I know that he faltered a little bit at the end of his time in Toronto, but he's won a Grey Cup, and he can put a coaching staff together on short notice, which is a really important thing right now. You have to have people who can coach and will fit within the salary cap. And since he's done that before, that gives him a real advantage in any competition for the head coaching job.
Evan, thoughts on that, kind of the recycled talent, coaching, and we've talked about this, for weeks, and the salary cap, and we went through the whole Chris Jones of it all, kind of everything else. Your thoughts on this?
Well, the CFL is a tight-knit community, and there's going to be guys that, maybe step down and then go back up. I think that's perfectly normal. I mean, if we want to talk about Scott Milanovich again, I was a very big fan of what he did in Hamilton. I think that turnaround was quite significant. I understand that, they still had some things to figure out. Bo Levi kind of came back late in the season, put him in the mix. You had Taylor Powell, you had Matt Schultz, you had a lot of guys, right? There was still, I don't want to say a lack of identity, but it wasn't perfect. But, Hamilton became competitive when Milanovich came in there, significantly more competitive than they were with Tommy Condell. And, they faltered in the playoffs. It's not what we expected. I think there'd be even more talk about this right now if Hamilton was able to beat Montreal. But, I really like Milanovich. And like, Jamie was saying, I think he's probably the best candidate. I know he's getting talked about a lot. I know it's, the one that's brought up the most. But, you look at his resume, it kind of speaks for itself. And, he was, again, the switch when they made that in Hamilton, I don't think that can be overlooked. I know it wasn't perfect, but that they really, that's what put them, I think, into playoffs. Not that the East was outside of, Toronto, not that the East was extremely competitive, but yeah.
In terms of, I want to get your thoughts, because Hamilton here, it seemed, it was a dumpster fire for a lot of the season, and Bo and kind of all that stuff. Like Steinhauer now, it just seems like we made the playoffs. It's business as usual now, like moving on to next year. Like, I don't know, what do you make of the Hamilton? And we'll get Jason's thoughts, but like, just in terms of, we were here again and we fell short, and then but now we roll it back next year.
Well, I was actually at Hamilton's last Grey Cup victory in 1999, which seems like a generation ago, and I know there are fewer and fewer people every year who were there. They haven't put it back together. We all think Orlando Steinhauer is a pretty good coach and quite popular, but is he a president? He's the president of football operations. Is he capable of that job? Well, he's taken over, and the team hasn't really gotten better. You'll find the teams that are having more success now are the teams that seem to divide those two jobs. So Orlando, if he moved up, we thought might happen, and then he could hire Scott Milanovich as the head guy. This team is in a little bit of trouble. Bo Levi Mitchell, the Calgary Stampeders, dumped him because they knew he was done. He's done. He's going to be a great football commentator on TSN. Let him go do that. I know it's tough for a player of his ilk to walk away, but he can't play anymore. They obviously decided that, as they were talking about, that Milanovich didn't use Bo Levi Mitchell as a quarterback in the playoffs. Matthew Schultz probably isn't a great quarterback to do that. I thought Taylor Powell showed a lot of potential, but are you going to start him in the playoffs? That's a tough thing for a team to do. They love, as you guys were talking about, love to have experienced coaches. Coaches love to have experienced quarterbacks. So that's why you put those guys in. And I thought that Bo Levi Mitchell was probably their best chance. Give him one more chance for a big explosion, but it just doesn't seem like they know exactly what they're doing in Hamilton at the moment. And I think they're a team in a little bit of turmoil at the moment. And Scott Milanovich might actually want to leave right at the moment because there's more opportunity somewhere else.
Yeah, Jason, we've talked. Obviously, you can talk. Ticats as a fan, and obviously as a CFL, kind of media member here. Like, what do you see them doing next? Because to me, like, it doesn't. Okay, it was successful. You made it to the playoffs, but it doesn't feel successful.
Yeah, I think that it just seems like they've kind of flatlined under Steinhauer. I think that, look at the first year, 15-3, they start out hot. They get to the Grey Cup, best record in franchise history in the regular season. And then they're 8-4 or 8-6 in 2021. And then 8-10 last year, 8-10 this year. So they've just kind of been regressing throughout the last few years here. And I think the main common denominator is they can't get the quarterback situation right. Even when they had Mazzoli and Evans, they couldn't really decide on who to play really when they, it worked out for them. They got to the Grey Cup, but ultimately they haven't been able to identify who is the guy. And I think that's the biggest problem. And what do you do for next year? Do you bring Bo back and just roll with him and Taylor Powell? Do you go with Schultz and Powell? Or do you go with, I'm going to throw a possibility out there, McLeod Bethel-Thompson? Do you bring him in and go with him and Taylor Powell as the combo there?
I'm glad you reminded me of that. And let's get Evan's thoughts in there, because we hear Bo's coming back, or not Bo, excuse me, McLeod's coming back. It's not a lot of negative comments like, oh, we found out that you can't whatever $50,000 is space. Like, God forbid he tries to go do his family and all these other things. But what do you make of Bo? And then we'll get your
Well, I mean, I think just in Hamilton in general, I really like Orlando Steinauer. As much as I credit Scott Milanovich for the turnaround in Hamilton, I think Steinauer, also, I was saying at the beginning of the season, if someone's going to pull him out of the hole, it's Steinauer with his experience. But I agree with Jason. I think that they've reached a point now where they've done what they can. They went to the Grey Cups. They didn't win. It was a very fast acceleration under him, but it's gone down now. And if you want to talk about hypotheticals, you just mentioned McLeod Bethel Thompson, and we'll obviously have Dave Naylor on here later, but he floated the idea of having June Jones coming back. And, I don't know if that's, accurate or not. We'll see. He expressed interest in coming back. But I really like June, obviously, from the XFL, followed that closely. I love his run and shoot offense. I think that would be great in the Canadian Football League. Might, spark something in Hamilton again, especially if Milanovich leaves, right? Talking about the offense. I love offensive football, so I'm not going to rebel on for too much about that. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways Hamilton could go. It's just, when a season like this happens where, it's really a mixed bag, ultimately you have to switch some things in the middle of the season, you lose in the playoffs. There's going to be a lot of questions, and they have to answer those too. I'm not as many as Saskatchewan, maybe, but they've definitely got some questions.
You laughed. You said, June Jones, McLeod, all this. I mean, that would be pretty crazy. What do you think of this?
Well, it would be kind of a couple steps backwards in terms of history anyway, but there aren't that many guys around who are proven CFL coaches. June Jones has done a good job in this league. He hasn't forgotten how to coach. Does it look like we're talking about moving forward and trying to find the next new coaches? And that's kind of why the CFL gets laughed at sometimes, that it would take that step backwards and do it. McLeod Bethel Thompson coming back, well, he's not, he's a functional quarterback. He could help a lot of teams. He might, Saskatchewan, I don't know what they're doing with Trevor Harris, as a quarterback. He's coming off, he's 37 years old. He's getting $500,000. He broken a knee in 5 places. Is he worth paying the highest salary to ever in the history of the Saskatchewan Roughriders? Probably not. So McLeod Bethel Thompson might have some options. So it's interesting. This is what we love about Grey Cup. There's so many people hanging around, and we all have these stories. And I've talked to this guy, I've talked to that guy. He wants to come back. How it all resolves itself, that's what the off season's for. It's going to be a lot of fun to keep watching. That's why we love this league.
Well, no, it is interesting, and it was. Similarly, in terms of like the coaching and throwing that ideas, it was the same to circle back with kind of the Rough Rider head coaching, and like it was kind of like, here, hey, I want to be the head coach. I want to be, we had John Ryan throwing his name in the, Seattle Seahawk legend, right? I mean, Super Bowl winner with it, but kind of rounding out here before we get out, I want to get your thoughts on kind of the shellacking that Montreal gave to Toronto. I'm gonna ask Naylor and all this. I want to know about this Chad Kelly situation. We've talked about this. Was Chad Kelly under duress here playing in the Grey Cup, or was he a full strength?
In the East Final, he was. Yeah, he wasn't the Chad Kelly that we're used to seeing. No confidence. He's throwing off his back foot. He just didn't look like the guy who had led the Argonauts to a 16-2 season. So something was amiss for him to come out and say it was a concussion without medical. Somebody from the doctor side saying he had a concussion. That's kind of a touchy situation. He wasn't the right guy. Was he concussed? Perhaps, but there are a lot of reasons. Maybe there are other reasons for why he didn't play very well, and a lot of them are the Montreal Alouettes. That was an amazing defensive performance by Noel Thorpe and his troops. So there's always other reasons why he don't play very well, but he wasn't the same guy. And if we had done the voting for outstanding player after that game, I think Brady Oliveira would have won the voting as opposed to Chad Kelly as being the outstanding player in the league.
Yeah, final thoughts on that. I'll get our next guest ready here. Final thoughts on the MOP thing, because I was on the plane flying in, and I thought, and we'll get more thoughts on this as well, as I'm sure we will get through the 2 hours here. But I mean, I was stunned.
Yeah, quarterbacks always get the advantage, don't they? But they can win all the time. They are the most valuable player. They're always obviously the most outstanding player because of their statistics, Reed. So that's who gets the votes quite often. But to me, Oliveira had an amazing season, 2,000 yards. He's a running back, right? And Zach Collaros had okay, but Zach Collaros' numbers are probably even better than Chad Kelly's in terms of the quarterback rankings. So what does that tell you? That everybody decided that Oliveira was a more important player, a more outstanding player to his team. That's who I would have voted for, and it was a surprise to me. I don't know if you guys think the same thing. Who would you have voted for?
Personally, I would have voted for Oliveira, but I do understand, like what you're saying, it's usually the best player on the best team that wins these awards.
Yeah, I think I would have, it's two criteria. It's usually a quarterback award, right? Someone who's a leader, and it's usually a regular season award. So you take away that performance by Chad Kelly in the East Final. But yeah, I wasn't too surprised about Chad Kelly. I think more than anything, while he Caleros maybe had better numbers, Oliveira with his 2,000 scrimmage yards. I get that. I just think while there wasn't a whole lot of expectation for Chad Kelly, in my opinion. I mean, he played in the Grey Cup, right? He came in there, a couple drives, but outside of that, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot. Like McLeod Bethel Thompson was their guy. He goes to the New Orleans Breakers in the USFL, and then Chad is suddenly thrusted into this role. And then Toronto goes on to win, tied for the most wins in a CFL season of all time, like it's nothing, and that isn't taken lightly. So yeah, I think Chad earned it.
We have a small child here crying over her fallen Jenga. I appreciate it. Darrell, I appreciate it. Anything else from you? We'll get Jim in here. Anything else before I see you tonight?
Just have a good night in the suite and go to bed early, okay? Thanks, guys.
Darrell, thank you very much. We'll get Jim Mullin in here next. Thank you, Darrell. Appreciate it. Don't trip yourself on the wire. We'll get Jim Mullin in here, President of Football Canada. Everything else, he's saying his condolences here. Were you guys surprised? I mean, I truly was with the Oliveira thing. I just think of any year that you're going to make a statement, to me, this is it.
Yeah, I definitely think so, because I think everybody that I talked to thought Oliveira was going to win this award. But like I said, at the end of the day, best player on the best team. It's not like Chad Kelly was an undeserving winner of this award. I mean, he led the league, led the team to the best regular season in CFL history. So at the end of the day, I was surprised, but Chad Kelly was deserving of the award still.
Well, here we go back. He was at the top of the show last year in Regina. Led off. We got you on. You come in hot. You text me. You say, I'll be there. Of course, we fit you in.
I think like $20 in parking to be here. So,
well, we appreciate it.
Because it is such an honor, after all.
It is. You're, I think, the most Canadian on here. I will say, I think you're feeling it. Jeff Hamilton completely dropped the ball, and I'll throw him under the bus. Jeff Hamilton missing the show today. Jim Mullin coming in. Jim, I was at Randy's State of because of course the media one was Tuesday. Yeah. God forbid that we cover that. Talking about the question from the audience. U Sports, you guys, were permanently supposedly moving CFL playoff games to Saturday. Did you have any consideration about U Sports? And Randy said, I think the quote was like, we need to look out best for our business. I knew tweeting that out, that would get you riled up. So what is your thoughts on that? We'll get into everything else.
Well, to one degree, he's right. They have to do what's best for their business. And I think in terms of what we've seen at the gate and what we started to see in terms of television numbers, I think he's been doing the best for his business here. That being said, part of what's good for business is alignment with the rest of the football community. And I don't think that piece has been worked on yet. However, I will say this about U Sports, about Canadian Junior Football League. Guys, do yourself a favor. Know what time these games are being played. Play around them. I pointed it out on Gridiron Nation this week that there was one point last Saturday where the BC Lions, the Canadian Bowl in Victoria, and the UBC Thunderbirds were all playing at the same time for an hour. That can't happen again. And so for something like junior football, like the Canadian Bowl, play it on Sunday. NFL fans are going to be NFL fans. They're not showing up for junior football in Canada, right? True football fans are going to be showing up for that live event. In university football in Western Canada, they play on Friday nights. I know that may create some discomfort for the high school football community. That could have a cascading effect there. I play one game on Friday, move a game earlier with time zones. There's a way to do this if you actually plan and you actually align. And quite frankly, my panelists said, well, that's kind of a job for you, Football Canada guys. So I opened up my big yap, and now people are looking at me thinking that I'm going to direct the traffic. I'm not sure if I want to take that on, but we'll see.
Jason, what do you make of the Saturday playoffs here? And to me, it was surprising that it was 1 year, and now it's like, well, this feels pretty permanent. I mean, I was surprised.
Yeah, well, I think they want to be more consistent this time around because I think it was 2008 that they did it on Saturday just for the 1 year, and then they changed it right back to Sunday. So I think they want to at least give it some runway and give them some, more of a sample size for it. My one tweak, because I like the Saturday games, my one tweak would be to just play it at 1 o'clock Eastern and 4 o'clock Eastern and avoid the Hockey Night in Canada, audience, because Hockey Night in Canada is really the big player in Canadian sports television.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. This isn't exactly my wheelhouse in terms of football scheduling, but I did enjoy, having the games on Saturdays. I think, from the U.S. perspective, when you're not I'm streaming the games off CFL Plus, right? So it's a bit different because you're not, actively browsing through channels. And I know, on Saturdays, I mean, that's a big college football day, so you can't. You're trying to maybe get away from the NFL, but you can't get away from everything. There's going to have to be some overlap. And then in terms of, youth sports and that kind of overlap, that's not really my wheelhouse either. But I think, it is important to keep, growing and developing the Canadian game and to make sure, that these schedules are somewhat separated. I think that's also important too. So there's a lot to consider.
I was just going to say, Hockey Night in Canada is going to be Hockey Night in Canada. This is like the NFL piece here too. Play those two CFL games, follow it up with a U Sport playoff game that goes up against Hockey Night in Canada, because hockey eyes are going to go to hockey, football eyes are going to go to football. They're starting at a very, very low foundation in terms of their numbers because they've been off TV for so long. If they just get on TV, there will be numbers that migrate to it. That'll be a plus because 70,000, 140,000, 200,000 plus zero is still those numbers. And that's what they're getting right now in that CBC gem world they're in.
In terms of the relationships right now, with all the football, and I know we went through all the CBA stuff last year and everything, how are you feeling in terms of the CFL working and kind of communication with U Sports and kind of everything else in general?
Well, to put the U Sports thing aside, I think from the Football Canada perspective, with flag going into the Olympics, I think that's opened up a lot of opportunities, not just for ourselves, putting two teams into the Olympic Games, but an opportunity for the CFL to find ways to work with us so we can evaluate athletes. Because right now we send a club team that wins a club competition into global competition, and most nations don't do that. And in a country as vast as Canada, we need to find these points where we can run combine activities and have numbers that we start evaluating athletes with. I think the CFL is a potential partner in that. There's a program that's also going to be announced very soon about officials development. CFL is going to be a part of that. So whatever turbulence was in the past, that's in the past right now. And at the end of the day, I think the CFL has assess what's going on at the grassroots level, assess the role of Football Canada, and is willing to step up big time in a way they haven't before. And that's a real change in direction from some of the previous conversations we've had.
What do you attribute that to?
I think it's a refocus on their part. I think they went down a certain path. Some of it was working, some of it wasn't working. And I think in addition to that, there's probably new owners around the table that have connections to grassroots football. Pierre-Carl Pelledeau from Quebec City knows the effect of the Laval Rouge or in that market, right? Amar Doman, I've had discussions with him, especially on the SFU piece. He's committed to grassroots football. I mean, he coaches his son's flag teams and has made investments in those flag programs. So when you have that change in ownership and those new voices around that table of essentially Randy's bosses, they're going to take a look at different ways to approach grassroots football and see a value in not just developing football players, but also developing the next generation of fans. And that's something the CFL needs in those 9 markets.
Jason, thoughts?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that, getting the grassroots involved. I think even if you look at the festival this week, they're doing a lot of things with, they have a flag football field set up in the Armory here in Hamilton. They're doing a bunch of stuff for kids to get involved and just be exposed to the CFL game or just be around the league. So I think that's really important for the CFL going forward.
Jim, I want to talk about the ownership and all of that. Now, like you said, getting these new voices in. How important is that here in 2023? And because Randy came out, okay, we're up this, and the demos are good, and everything's rosy. Like how, what do you attribute that growth to? Is it getting these new owners in? We're seeing success in Toronto. On the field that helps, and then you have Amar, Pierre. Like they're. It feels like certain markets that maybe weren't healthy before are healthy now. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think there is some new energy with those new owners, and the new energy came in just in time after the pandemic. I think the CFL really paid the price for not even having some sort of bubble competition for 6 weeks or 6 games, and a lot of those fans discovered that there were other things to do. That there was that 20% drop off of people that just didn't return. So a lot of that construction back is now giving them momentum. I think I feel momentum around the league right now, guys. I really do. I think there are some things that are getting traction, some things they're doing right. They're certainly not out of the woods yet, but at least the direction is positive. I sure hope that it's not just talk around Halifax, though. I sure hope that there's that focus on that 10th team because that would be a game changer for this league.
Are you viewing Evan kind of positive energy right now in the CFL?
Absolutely, and I think all this discussion has actually brought up a point that I haven't thought about in a while, and that would be sort of the global development of the CFL and maybe just Canadian football in general. I think it was back in 2019 the CFL had a joint draft with the LFA League in Mexico, and now you're seeing a lot more guys. I mean, besides like Australian punters, obviously, right? I mean, Toronto just had a kicker come in that last game against Saskatchewan in the regular season who was of Spanish descent, who played in the LFA. Now, he struggled in that game, but they're bringing these guys in and they're giving them playing time. And I think what's really important, too, is, again, not just specialists, but guys, from overseas, other positions, maybe defensive end, for example. That's something that I'm really interested to see continue to develop because I think the CFL is a very diverse league. Yes, there's only 9 teams. Yes, there's work that needs to be done. But this game can grow, and I take great pride in being at least some part of that.
Jim, is someone that we talk a lot of Mariners, a lot of American sports as well, and we get into all that and the Otani, what was it, the article that came out? But I want to get your thoughts.
Sell the team.
I want to get your thoughts on the CFL Plus and all of this. We talked a little bit before with Darrell and Grey Cup, only available online, not streaming. The CBS Sports Network package carried a lot more of the summer games. What do you make of that? Of trying to, and it's not just America; it's international. If you're outside of Canada, the only way to watch the Grey Cup is online. Which it's great that it's available, but that's still cutting out a large demo of people that aren't able to figure out, as easy as it might be, figure out how to access that.
That's right. You don't get collisions if you're not on standard linear television, and you're missing out on a lot of people that are out there that could be consuming your product. That being said, I think the league and the league office was in a position where they wanted to get revenue for whatever games they had. So this was the path for them to bring in revenue and fund the things that they need to do through their front office in Toronto. At the end of the day, I think that they would like something that's a little more comprehensive and accessible to the American and international fan. But I think that they needed the cash in through the front door. And by doing it this way, they got the cash in through the front door. Let's see what CBS Sports Network does in future years. So we don't get a VMI Arizona basketball game preempting the Grey Cup. I mean, that is kind of embarrassing, but we also need to remember when this deal came together. Like, it came together really late in the game. So, some of these contracts that CBS has in place, they have to realize these contracts. So even though it feels like right now this week that this isn't the greatest deal, at least it's available on CFL Plus.
My feeling, though, with it is when Randy comes out at the Fan State of the Union and says, yeah, in 2026, we'll reevaluate that. I mean, that's an eternity from that. I mean, that's when, that's forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a long ways off, isn't it? Well, hopefully, within the deal that they have, they can find that path to Grey Cup Sunday. Hopefully they can find that path to games later in the season that aren't being picked up in that package. Or hopefully they can find a path to splitting their contract in the United States.
I'm keeping an eye out here. I think Farhan and Naylor are supposed to come soon. We'll keep you if you need to go. Dorothy can pop in here and fill in before we go. Thoughts on the game itself here, and we'll get some comments from Evan and Jason. But thoughts on, are we excited? What do you make of the actual Grey Cup game?
Well, I saw the simulation that was played out that had it was played out 10,000 times, which said that the Bombers would win 27-24. I think the gap is going to be much broader, and it's going to be lower scoring. I like what Montreal can do on their defense in many different ways. Got great speed out of the defensive backfield. Mike Hogan of the Argos pointed out to me, says, how many times did Montreal's quarterback get sacked in that last game? Was it 7 or 8?
Something like that.
It was. I think it was 8 times, and he threw for 200 yards.
Yeah.
Yet the scoreboard was the way it was. Like if you give me those 2 stats, I'm saying the Argos are winning that game 19 times out of 20. This just happened to be the 20th game. I don't see Montreal scoring a lot of points in this game. I see them like in the 11-14 range. I see Winnipeg scraping something out in the low 20s to mid 20s. I think it's going to be a bit of a wet firecracker on Sunday.
Evan, what do you make? Let's get your response to that.
I mean, I think I agree with it being low scoring, but Montreal, like, I didn't pick Montreal. Okay, I haven't made my official prediction yet, but I do like Winnipeg. I just think Montreal just keeps finding a way. I think their offense. I said earlier before you were here that was probably the most concerning unit on any side of the football, whether you're Winnipeg or Montreal. They really need to get moving. You got to get a couple big plays down the field to Austin Mack, and if they can do that, I think they have a chance. But I think it'll be all around a defensive game. I don't know if there's going to be. I'm hoping it's close, right? I don't know how big the gap will be in scoring. I hope that Montreal is able to keep it close, whether they score on offense or score on defense. But yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. I think we can all agree, this maybe wasn't the quote unquote sexiest Grey Cup matchup. I was saying, maybe last week that, this was not like I could have gone through, so many different matchups before I would have landed on a Winnipeg Montreal, especially given, Montreal, the fact that they didn't beat, Toronto, BC, or Winnipeg in the regular season. But now none of that matters. They're here, and, we'll see where it goes.
Jason, I want to get your thoughts on that because we were talking the turnover. My mic here. We're talking the turnover battle, and it felt like when Saskatchewan, it was Winnipeg turning the ball over 6 times to Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
And they still, it was the other way here, obviously, and the Argos lost. But, Winnipeg looked incredibly strong that year in terms of we can turn the ball over this many times and still beat you. Like Montreal, they got a lot of free balls on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that really the formula for Montreal to win this game, and it's been working for them the whole year, is non-offensive touchdowns. I think they had 12 of them this year or something like that because they had a lot of return touchdowns and a lot of defensive touchdowns. If they get one or more of those in this game, I think they have a shot to win.
Jim, thoughts on the MOP debate here? We have had a lot of discussion about the Chad Kelly of it all versus Brady Oliveira. I want to get your thoughts on that.
There's no debate for me. Chad Kelly is the MOP of the Canadian Football League. And even saying that, we know about the imbalanced schedule between the West and the East. We know how Toronto only played certain teams one time. But this is a team that went 16-2. Wasn't active in all of those games, but most of those games. And yes, he had a tremendous supporting cast. But, in terms of MOP, there's also a star power piece attached to it, too. There's the ability to sell the game. I'm reminded of the 1980 NBA final when everyone thought Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was supposed to be the winner, and Sport Magazine actually voted him the MVP of the NBA Finals, and he didn't play in Game 7. And the NBA quietly said, Magic Johnson, you are going to be the star of this league. You're the MVP of the final. Because they went after star power, and they went after someone that could sell the game. And it's important to have somebody that's going to sell the game in Canada's biggest media center, period. And for those reasons, in addition to his play on the field, that's why he's the most outstanding player in the league. Nothing against Brady Oliveira, by the way, who I went down and saw play in a sophomore year in North Dakota. This guy's got a lot to give. He had a fantastic year, an outstanding year, but he's not as important to this league as Chad Kelly is.
I got one last question. Farhan and Naylor just texted they're on their way up. So we got Dan standing by. We'll get to everyone here. I appreciate it. In terms of going back to the balanced schedule here, like, why was it not? I mean, I'm not as smart enough to, they say, and everyone hoots and hollers like, well, what was the deal here? Why did we ever deviate away from that?
There you go. There's your answer. I mean, you take a look at the travel, train travel, bus travel, shorter travel in Western Canada. It was a money consideration. Just like the consideration with CBS Sports Network, it's about getting money in the door after having a couple of bad seasons and coming off a pandemic season. So, how can you argue when you're financially challenged not to do something where you're addressing some of your business model? I'm glad to see that the business model is stabilized enough that we can run a real balanced schedule. And it's kind of imbalanced too. You get a couple of teams playing each other 3 times a year instead of twice a year. But for the most part, everybody gets to play each other twice. And you'll get a truer test of the Argos next year. The Argos will not be a 16-2 team if they have to play home and homes with everybody across the board.
And I guess I didn't realize that, Jason, that Toronto was getting flack that they didn't play as balanced a schedule.
Well, they didn't play BC in BC, and they didn't play Winnipeg at home. So they played only those top two teams from the West only once each. And obviously that Winnipeg game didn't matter at that point of the season. So, yeah, I'm very interested to see how it works out next year when it goes back to the balanced schedule. One thing I'm looking forward to is seeing if there's a crossover team next year, because the last 3 years we haven't seen a crossover team. But the last time there was a balanced schedule in 2019, Edmonton crossed over. So.
Perfect. Evan, any comments from you? I see our next guest come in here. Jim, I appreciate it. Anything else from you first? Then we'll go to Evan.
I just saw them just pass right by here, right? I'm getting a backache from carrying them. So if you can get me some Advil from to address my backache from carrying those 2 clowns, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, we have the investigative journalist here. Well, hey, Dorothy, could you go track that? Jim, thank you so much. Yeah. Maybe you can pass along the message to Dorothy here. Thank you so much. There we go. Okay, they found it. We'll get them on here. Whenever we're waiting for you guys here, get on here. We got come on the other side, please. We got Dave Naylor, Farhan coming on here. A little moving chairs here. Evan sitting, taking a seat here. We got Naylor. We'll give that one here. Good to see you guys walking. The big investigative journalists of the CFL walk right on by the Margas booth here. I got a question first. We'll get both of you. I have heard a lot this week. I know that there's a lot of media politicking and all that. Did Chad Kelly have a concussion when he played the East Finals?
I mean, in our conversations with people around the Toronto Argonauts and the Canadian Football League, there is nothing to indicate that he had a concussion during that game. And that is just from those sources and those people that were around. I mean, the league's concussion spotter, various people on the Toronto Argonauts staff and in that organization, we cannot find no evidence that he had a concussion during that game.
Yeah, people looking at it after the fact, and they're trying to look for that moment in game where they might have missed it. And look, it's a tricky topic, right? Because it's easy to say that, Chad Kelly's looking for an excuse because he had a poor game or what have you. I mean, and that narrative is out there. But at the end of the day, you don't know when concussions do or don't occur in a game, and it's not always the obvious. So we're not sitting here saying he didn't have one. But certainly the people around the team and around the league that are looking at it are I don't want to say skeptical, but there's still a little bit of confusion on the topic for sure.
What do we make of this, the bilingualness of the stadium and everything going on here? I've seen a lot of reports coming out about the league embarrassed. Is this true? Is it with having the CFL logo and all of that on the field and everything in French? Is that accurate?
I have heard about this issue. This is not one I've had a chance to dig into. And when I was asked about it, I was at the Armory where the festival is, where our TSN stage is. And I looked out across the signage at the Armory and I did not see anything in French. Yeah. And so that is only what I can tell you, because I was at the Armory when this issue was brought to my attention. But given the nature of our day today, it has not been something we have had a lot of time to dig into.
Is that a big deal, do you think?
Yeah, it is in this country. I mean, this is a bilingual country. It's a bilingual league. You've got a team from Quebec in it. I don't know that it's necessarily on Hamilton to do all of that throughout the city, but it's certainly as far as being in the stadium, you want to make sure that that's reflective of the Grey Cup game and what's going on in the field.
Well, and it was an issue that was brought to the attention of the commissioner during his State of the League address on Tuesday that O Canada, when it was performed at the East Division final in Toronto with Montreal there, it was performed unilingually in English. The commissioner explained that the anthem singer that was selected by the Argonauts was not capable of singing it in French.
What is going on with McLeod Bethel-Thompson?
That's his.
I think McLeod's going to be back in the Canadian football next year. Now, I don't think that's a slam dunk. I have spoken to his agent, who's here in Hamilton this week, and McLeod wants to keep playing. He's going to be 36 next January. Spring football is still an option for him. He was in the USFL. He had a lot of success there. He could potentially go back there, but I get the sense that if somebody could, offer him a starting job and everything that goes with that, my sense is he probably would lean to coming back here. We'll see if that fit is there. Talking to people around the league, I think a lot of people are going to kick the tires on McLeod. Who's going to dive right in and say, it's your job? Maybe Ottawa, and that's not something that we've heard from Ottawa. That's just us kind of evaluating the situations and who's available at quarterback league-wide. But, I think there's a real possibility that he comes back. And, this is kind of reflective of what's going on. I mean, obviously about what's going on in the XFL and the USFL more than we do, but there is a little bit of there are some players that are a little nervous, right? Like I talked to some executives, and they have said we've been able to sign a couple of players earlier than we would have at this time last year when everybody wanted to wait. Now there's some guys that are a little nervous just because the timing and schedules haven't been set yet. I don't know if McLeod necessarily fits into that category, but interesting that he is got eyes wide open in terms of possibly coming back.
I'll go to you in a second, Evan. I got one more for Dave because it reminded me of that. I saw your tweet this morning. Yeah, little change in tune of like, the CFL doesn't have to worry about the spring league now. There's so much uncertainty there. I just thought it was funny because
that's not what he said.
No.
He just said they've fought off many challenges.
Yeah, we've conquered all foes.
Well,
here.
no, I think what we're saying is that the direction of things. Look, when the XFL CFL merger was happening, let's remember what was going on. The Canadian Football League hadn't played in a year. There were teams that didn't have money. There was a league that was, basically the coffers were empty, and that was that. The consideration of that possibility, let's be honest about it, was brought about by desperation. And all, as reporters on that, and we're asked for our opinions, all Farhan and I ever did was advocate that they needed to explore it thoroughly, which they did, okay? We never said they need to do this or die or those things that have been put in our mouth. That is not what we said at the time. Now, I think what was happening, and it is our understanding that in the new league, the coach's salary structure will be more like the USFL than the XFL. And that's going to reduce competition for the Canadian Football League in terms of coaches. So that is one sort of, challenger on the coaching front that's going to be, I think, diminished. And I just think the general uncertainty, about these leagues. I mean, what's the schedule of this league? Where are the cities? All these kind of questions that still remain unanswered by the time you get to November. We know professional football is an uncertain enough business as it is. If I was a player, I guess I could look north and say, well, I know where the teams are, and I know when the season starts, and I know who the coaches and the GMs are. I mean, there's just a lot more stability north of the border than south right now when it comes to what we still term alternative professional football.
And you know me, I'm not a spring football hater. I've always been that guy that says more football is good football. You know that. So I'm happy to come hang out with you at a Sea Dragons game at any point. Right?
I hate the boy first of all.
Well, so like I said, so for us, like there's certainly no celebration or glee. Like I think more football is good, but just what's happened from everything we've heard is that I think initially the XFL or the USFL wanted to stay on their later timeline relative to the XFL. So we'll see what happens there in terms of when they start. Did they want to move earlier? Could they pull that off at this stage of the game or stage of the calendar? I think it's tough, but me for one, I hope there's a spring football league, right? I mean, I've always said to you, I didn't think both were going to survive, but I was hopeful that one would, and I still am.
Yeah, we're talking about challenge. We're talking about challenges for players and coaches. I mean, that's where the competition exists, and I think the CFL seems to be coming out on the high side of that.
And and if you want me to go do sidelines for a USFL game, I promise you, I won't lie.
Okay, that's good.
On any information that I get from coaches.
Oh, who's lying?
Oh, come on, really?
Oh, I get it. Sorry, that took me a
really?
minute. That joke's never going to die now. I mean, she's ruined her.
So I'm just telling you that I can do a USFL game and I'll be truthful about it all.
Evan, what do you got? You got Dave and the bar on here. What do you want to know?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple things. I'm not sure I'm going to ask too many questions, but just a couple clarifying points. I think McLeod Bethel-Thompson, I'm not sure, he's a veteran, right? So I don't know where he sits on, all the merger talks. I don't know if he reads much into that. I think McLeod Bethel-Thompson probably feels more at home in Canada now. He went to the USFL. because he wanted to be closer to his family. That's understandable. But I think because he was in the CFL for, so many years, and look, he didn't perform poorly in the USFL.
No.
Okay, but it didn't seem, to me at least, it didn't really, I don't know, the fit to me didn't seem like it was a long-term future. That's just me. I could see him coming back to the Canadian Football League, in a starting role. He's a veteran. People respect that. Talking about the merger stuff, I think one of the more unique storylines, coming out of the Grey Cup here is Darrell Sankey, who played with the Arlington Renegades, won the 2023 XFL Championship, signed late with Montreal, and him and Sean Lemon have obviously been wrecking the game. And now Sankey has an opportunity here to win 2 Pro Football Championships in a year. And that's all great. The one question that I had, because I don't want to keep it for too long, we've been talking a lot about it already. I don't want to overuse it with our previous guests, but the MOP debate. You've got Chad Kelly, you've got Brady Oliveira. It's a hot topic, I know. I thought Kelly was the right decision. There were a lot of people that thought Oliveira was the right decision. Where do you guys sit on that? I'm very interested to hear.
Well, look, I am a huge Chad Kelly fan.
Huge.
I mean, week number 2 of the season, I wrote a column saying Chad Kelly is the most important player in the Canadian Football League. And I was ridiculed for it. And I will stand up right now and tell you the most important player in the Canadian Football League is Chad Kelly. But when it came to the MOP vote, I think Brady Oliveira did his job better than any player in the league this season. And on that basis, I think Brady Oliveira was the most deserving to be the MOP. And I congratulated Chad after the show for his attitude, for his presence, for what he's meant for the city of Toronto. This is not to take away from Chad Kelly. I just think overall Brady Oliveira, fulfilled his assignment, did what his team asked him to do better than anybody else.
Yeah, and it's the most outstanding player. It's not most valuable player, right? And certainly Chad had value to the franchise. He had value to the league. Vernon Adams, we talk about what he was asked to do in BC relative to guys like Kelly and Zach Collaros, who've got great O-lines and great run games. But to Dave's point, when you stack up Brady Oliveira's season, on the hierarchy of what a running back does in history, both, it's been 10 years since a guy's had 2,000 all-purpose yards and 1,500 rushing yards. 4,100 yards, that's a Tuesday. You know what I mean? Like, that's any season for a quarterback. So Chad Kelly was good. I think you can overplay wins because wins are not a quarterback stat, right? Like, they are not. So as great as that is, and he didn't play that game against Winnipeg, there's a number of other things that put it into context. I would take Brady all day in that debate.
All right, last question for you guys. We got Dan standing by. I know you guys are busy. I appreciate, they're going live. TSN making
Have you had Mullin on?
Yeah, Mullin's already been on.
Okay, so you I hope you talk Mariners with him.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, good.
We talked youth sports and all that stuff. But I just wanted to point out that our location was so good 2 years ago, the George Hamilton, that I guess TSN now rented out the whole damn building here. So I just pointed that out there. Last question for you guys. Randy, and it's foofy, but the state fan one that they did Friday, he's talking a lot of growth of the league and demos and everything's up and whatever. Like, what's your understanding of kind of the health of everything right now? Because it seems like people, Ambrosi is the greatest thing in the world right now.
Well, I don't know if everyone's jumped on Randy's bandwagon, but certainly in terms of the metrics around the league, both in terms of attendance, in terms of where the television ratings are, and not just overall ratings, but ratings in the right demo, I think it is going in the right direction. So, it took some time, and there's still ways for it to go. We were coming down here and we talked about it, that boy, the league is sure improved in specific areas, but in terms of actual diversity, crowds at events here in Hamilton and even at games quite often look like what the league did 40 years ago. Like, I'd love for the look of the league and its fan base and its supporters to get a little bit more diverse and things like that, because certainly the players, the on-field product is very diverse in terms of what that looks like. And you see the league with its global initiative trying to go there. But in terms of where they're at, the quality of play, all of it, I think it's headed in the right direction.
I think it's been a very positive year for the CFL. And I would echo Farhan's sentiments. I mean, it's vital from a business interest. And Canada's population is so diverse now, and that diversity is not reflected in the stands. They are not, by and large, new Canadians, and people who are first generations of new Canadians are not Canadian Football League customers. And if this league is going to be vital into the future, that has to change. But overall, I think what the league has been talking about with its 3 biggest markets, I mean, I can't tell you the number of years we've shown up at the Grey Cup, and the biggest concerns are in order, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Mix the order any way you want, but those are the soft spots. And it's been, I think, very gratifying for the league to see the improvement in those places. Some of it goes with the success of the teams, but I think overall there's been a business improvement. And hey, it's not that long ago this league was in some very desperate straits, and I think people are walking around right now feeling pretty good about the present and the future of the Canadian Football League.
Awesome. Well, thanks. You guys get out of here, get back to work. I haven't seen you at the suite yet. We've been hanging out, waiting to
We
come.
were there 2 nights ago. You obviously were late arriving.
We flew in Thursday.
Well, there you go.
All right,
So
well, we'll catch up here. I appreciate it.
I'm watching the Huskies in Oregon State tonight, so I'm not sure I'm making the visit to the suite.
We got to. Hey, you can put it on in the suite, Farhan. We got to make an appearance tonight with Reed. You got it. You got it. Come on.
All right,
All right, we'll see about it. You guys get out of here. Thanks so much. Thanks, Farhan.
Thanks so much,
Dave.
guys.
All right, we'll get Jason back in here. We'll get Dan Ralph back in. Thank you. I got it. You're good.
You're good.
Thank you. All right, thanks, guys. We'll get the swap out here. They're back to work, making time coming in here. Let's get Jason, and then can we get Jason? Can you get Dan Ralph? Can you ping him? We'll get them back in. Evan, thoughts on that? Thoughts on Naylor and Farhan?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think their point about, the progress that's been made in the Canadian Football League, definitely from a on-field perspective, I think it improved this year. Overall, just it feels like we've really been building, coming off that COVID comeback. This is season 3, really the only second full season because you only played 14 games in 2021. But, yeah, overall, I thought that was a great way to end it off.
Dan, welcome here. Dan Ralph, Canadian Press. We've been talking with Nathan, right? One of the photographers, Canadian Press. Been hanging out in the suite a lot with them. Been fun. What are you tracking this week? A lot of different things to talk about. What's on your mind?
I just want to get through the week. It's been Grey Cup's funny. You get here and you're excited, and then all the work starts, and then by last night I'm ready for the game to be played. So. I'll be honest. We're tracking a bunch of things. You've got the two teams in the game. You've got the commissioner having his news conference on Tuesday, telling you one thing, and then you've got the PA having theirs and telling you another about we talk about revenue sharing, and the PAs, the Players Association, are saying they haven't got the numbers from the league yet for 2022. They filed a grievance to get those numbers so that you can actually start figuring out the revenue sharing formula. And then you've got the injury situation in BC with Dalton Schoen and Adam Bighill, which you start following Tuesday, and you got to check every day. And now they're game time decisions, so we'll be checking at 5:55 tomorrow night, right before the game. So myriad of things, but hey, it's Grey Cup week. It's a blast, and you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way.
What is revenue share? So what is? Walk us through a little bit more of that because we haven't touched on this as much yet.
It was something that was collectively bargained in the last CBA, and so that was 2 years ago, and there was a formula in place by where the league would tell you this is what we took in, and the PA would verify it, and there would be a formula where they could share some of that revenue with the players. At the time of the CBA signing, it was the first time that the two sides had agreed to revenue sharing. So you sort of assume that, okay, well, that's a good thing, right? And then this year, Commissioner Ambrosi talked about all the positives going on. You've got, an increase in attendance in Toronto. You've got the Montreal Alouettes here after, uncertainty with their franchise. You've got continued growth in BC. So the economics part of it looked good. And then all of a sudden, you go into the PA State of the Union and they go, we haven't got our numbers from the league from 2022. We've had to file a grievance to get them. We want to get the numbers because we want to check them and verify. And so you begin to think that, okay, well, things maybe aren't as rosy as we're led to believe. So, excuse me. So there's that. And I was surprised. I was quite surprised, but, one of many things happening this week.
Jason, I saw your eyes go up.
I can't believe that the CFL hasn't even gotten the numbers to them for the 2022 season yet. So yeah, that whole fact just boggled my mind.
Took me for a loop. Obviously.
So what's the timeline of that? When are we going to find out what the grievance?
That's a really good question. If they file the grievance, then it has to go to an arbitrator. Then you've got to get that all taken care of. So that takes a bit of time. Arbitration can be quick. Arbitration can be tedious. That's something we'll keep our eye on moving forward.
I asked the same question you I did with Farhan and Naylor about Chad Kelly and all of this, Toronto, and thoughts, and then we'll get Evan comments.
Okay. Do I think he had head trauma? Yes. Until he unequivocally said that he had suffered a concussion or diagnosed with a concussion, I'm a little skeptical because the story that went out there initially, the word concussion was in the headline. The word concussion was in a bracket in a quote, and that's the only attribution to it. So I don't know. I'm not 100% sure that there was a concussion levied. I'm a little perplexed that if he did suffer something, that he didn't let the medical staff or his coaches know. And if he did suffer it, I'm not sure it had any bearing on the first pick six he threw because it was in the first quarter. But he was off. There was no if, and, or buts. But I can't, I'm not a doctor, but I felt a little surprised when that came out because it brought the league into question. It brought the medical staff of the Argos into question. And, I don't know. I didn't see anything. I was at the game. I didn't see any hit that he was particularly woozy or had difficulty getting off the field. But like I said, I'm not a doctor.
Evan, I won't make you comment on the concussion part, but does it take away? It feels like it takes away some of the Montreal win here of like, well, Chad was so banged up, or I mean, you know what I mean? Because now they're here in the Grey Cup, and like, well, maybe you didn't beat as true an opponent. I don't know.
Well, I just think it goes two ways because on the one end, if Chad really did have a concussion, that looks bad on the team and the medical staff and all that. But if he didn't have a concussion, it's a very interesting scapegoat to use for what was just an outright poor performance. So I see both sides to it rather. Does it take away from the Montreal win? I don't know. I mean, I was focused on Montreal that whole game. It got to a point, even at half, where it was only, I think, 10-3. I just had a really good feeling with the way Montreal was playing in their defense, led by Noel Thorpe. I thought that they were going to pull that one out, even if it was a one-score game. So I don't know. I mean, at least for me, it doesn't take away too much from it. But that situation is, it's certainly one that I did not expect to be hearing about for so long.
Dan, are you surprised? Like, and we had conversations all season. It was ever since Toronto and rest versus rust and kind of all this stuff, and then they really did just come in and crap the bed, for lack of a better word. I mean, are you surprised of all this?
I was very. I thought Toronto was going to win, and I thought if the game was going to get out of hand, it was going to be the other way. I didn't see 9 turnovers coming. You're talking about a team that turned the ball over 27 times the entire year. And a third of that comes in one playoff game. 26,000 at home. If you're going to pick a time to play your worst game of the year, that's not it. I really thought Montreal did a nice job defensively against Hamilton and not allowing a touchdown. But I also thought you were talking about 2 different offenses. But and Toronto's defense, 7 sacks, and they did their part, but you're not going to win a game when you turn the ball over 9 times. So while there's question about, was Kelly right? Was he on his game? Hell, 9 turnovers. That to me is dominant. Whether Chad was on or off, I mean, it was dominant.
Tim Capper's messaging. They're running into traffic. Our next guest. We'll get a couple more with Dan, and then maybe we'll get Dorothy in here, and you can go do your other work here. I appreciate it. In terms of the Alouettes here, what do you make, I guess, of the game itself? In terms of we've heard low scoring and defensive, and they're going to get killed and everything else. What do you make of the actual game?
I think it's close. I really do. I just think that Winnipeg is very balanced, and I mean, they've got the quarterback who I think is the most proven and is the most battle-tested quarterback in the CFL, and he's at this game for the 4th time in a row. He's won it. He's been the MVP. But I think they're balanced. I mean, Grady Oliveira ran for over 100 yards both times against Montreal this year. They like to establish the run. They're dedicated to the run. And if they get the run going, I think that makes Zach even more dangerous. There's some questions about whether or not Dalton Schoen will play. He's a big part of their pass offense, but he's not the only part. And if I had Kenny Lawler as my number 2 receiver, I'd be pretty good. So I think they're good offensively. I think they're multifaceted, and that defense. I mean, that defense is better than Toronto's on paper, and Toronto, in my mind, their defense controlled Montreal's offense. So if Winnipeg doesn't turn the ball over, and there's no indication that they will, then I think they win by 7. I think it's close, but I'd still go with the team that's been here for the 4th time.
I have another question about the Toronto stuff, but Jason, in terms of that, just in terms of the pedigree of Winnipeg, does that do anything for you? And we'll get Evan's thoughts also.
In terms of like their ability to win?
Yeah, and hold your mic up just a little bit there. In terms of their pedigree.
I think so. I think that, you look at the other side with Montreal, they don't have a lot of experience in that regard. Obviously, like none of these guys are around the last time they made it back to the Grey Cup in 2010. But I think Winnipeg just has so much experience. Like Dan said, they're just such a well-balanced team. I think that, Montreal, it just comes down to it. I don't think they have the explosiveness if this turns into a kind of a shootout, higher scoring game, which I don't think it will be. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. I think, the two number 1 and number 2 scoring defenses in the CFL this season. But I think at the end of the day, Winnipeg's experience will play a big role.
That's it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, this team's been in the Grey Cup since 2019. I understand there wasn't a season in 2020, but it's still 4 straight. Like I was saying earlier, the only thing that'll be really interesting is if, the outlook of Winnipeg from here on out in the future could be very different depending on whether or not they win this game, because a lot of those guys on that team, and again, I don't want to be repetitive, but since we got a new guest, I'm going to bring it up again. A lot of guys on that team are getting older, and I don't want to say this is the end of anything, but they lost a very close game last year. Very tough when you work your entire season to get to that point. You lose by 1. Very tough. I mean, it was a good game, right, for us on the entertainment side. Really enjoyed watching that. But if they lose this game, it's a bit different because Montreal, no one expected them to be here, and they don't have, again, that pedigree that we're talking about. They don't have that experience. It really is, the only guy on Montreal that I can think of, that really is not true veteran leader, but like Christian Matt. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. I always butcher these pronunciations, even if they're simple. But he's really the only guy, that's been there, in that spot for so many years. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, Winnipeg's experience, I think that's a no-brainer when it comes to their odds, in terms of winning this game.
The one thing I wanted to add too, win or lose, we're going to be watching the Bombers in December because their GM and their 2 assistant GMs are in the last years of contracts, and neither of those 3 have re-signed for 2024. And there's some question about whether they can keep 1, 2, or all 3. And Kyle Walters, the GM, the architect of this team. His fingerprints are all over it, and I'm really, really surprised he's not under contract for next year. But you know what? If they, like to your point, if they lose and all of a sudden they're 2-2 in this thing, in this realm of 4, and they lose their GM in the off season, and they're a year older, and maybe guys start to see that this is starting to maybe unravel a little bit, they start taking the money to go to other teams and get the opportunity elsewhere rather than coming back and playing for 5 if they don't win.
Well, Jason, you've done a lot of videos about, and I know you had the one talking about the dynasties and the Toronto and all that, but where do you view the legacy if they're 2-2?
Well, there's a lot of teams in the last 20 years of the CFL that have won 2 championships. Not many teams have won 3 in, I guess the Alouettes won 1 2002 and then won back-to-back 2009, 2010. But there was such a gap between those 2 teams that those championships that I wouldn't really consider that kind of the same team. I guess you still had Calvillo and Brian Chu on that team, but it was kind of a different team. But in terms of winning 3 Grey Cups in a 5-year period, it hasn't been done since Edmonton in the 1980s and late 1970s, and before that, Hamilton in the 60s and Winnipeg in the 50s and early 60s. So it's some teams have gotten close. Calgary in the 2010s, they had 4 Grey Cups in a row or 3 Grey Cup appearances in a row, and they got upset in a couple of them. So we've seen some massive upsets in this game. So nothing would just surprise me with this game on Sunday.
Dan, another question for you. I joked in the thing during the Toronto loss. We saw the biggest attendance ever at BMO Field. Told they lay an egg, and now we've killed another generation of Toronto, CFL fans. But how do you view with the success that they've had now, and obviously not dynasty like Winnipeg yet, but but the success they found? Like, is the table, the pendulum swinging, I guess, in Toronto? Or, I mean, what do you view?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I think if they come back next year, I mean, they were 16-2 this year, but let's not forget, this is the third straight year that they've finished first in the East. It's the third straight year that they've hosted the East Finals. So they've sort of set some expectation of winning there. If they come back next year and put a good season together, they better go and finish the deal, because, I mean, 16-2 is as dominant as you can be in the CFL, but it means nothing given what happened. So if they go 4 straight into the, finish first in the East, and they should, and if they host the East Final again, and they should, and heaven forbid if they get back into the Grey Cup again and win it, then we can start talking about that they've turned the corner, right? But right now, I mean, it's nice. It's a nice feel-good story, but invariably we're always saying but, right? So I think they have to go next year and build on that. Not necessarily, I mean, you're not going to go 17-1, but win the Grey Cup. And then we'll start talking about, that they avenge that. The same scenario next year if they get in and win it. That we talked to Brady Oliveira and the Bombers again this year about being 1 point short and how that had a motivating factor in their offseason, because we'd be talking about a team that could win 4 straight. And so to me, 3 straight in 4 years, I'm not ready to call it a dynasty. 4 straight in 4 years, yeah, then you're forced to.
I got one last question. Tim and Cliffy are getting set up here. We'll get them on, and maybe Jason can stay and Evan can hop. Well, I forgot we had two-person guests on here. Last question for you. With Toronto, we made all this and resting on their laurels or resting players, all that. Were they prepared enough going into the East Final? Did you view that? I mean, the Chad Kelly aside, I mean, the team as a whole.
I did not think they were rusty. I did not think there was. I thought that Coach Dinwiddie did a very, very good job of not only managing his team after they clinched the East Division in mid-September, but he also had them. They had a winning record from that point on, and I think they were in every game except for the one against Winnipeg, and even then, they only lost by 10, and they were leading in the second half. So. I did not think that there was any ring rust. I did not think that that they were, they benefited negatively about having clinched the East so far so early. No, I thought they went into the final in good shape. They played 10 straight weeks. They needed a week off. They got that. You would have thought they would have been rested. You would have thought they'd have been rejuvenated. They just ran into a buzzsaw, and you know what? It was Chad's first playoff game, and maybe he'll learn something from it, because there wasn't a game this year that he was pressured like he was pressured last weekend. It's for the first time this year. I really thought I saw a guy who was a little shell-shocked.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. It's good seeing you as always. There we go. Thank you for sitting around. Appreciate it. We'll bring in Tim and Cliffy. Jason, you stick around. Evan, maybe you can give Cliffy the mic. Jason, you stick around. And we'll bring them in here. Come on, guys. We got our guests. And then we got Baker standing by. We'll talk that coming out at the end. Appreciate it. Moving chairs here. Cliffy, how are you doing, sir? Get in here. Tim, get in here. Tim, you can take that one. Cliffy, you and I will share here. How are you guys doing? I mean, I've seen Cliffy in person before. Unless I forget, I don't think we've ever.
No.
You got to be on top of the world right now. How are you guys feeling?
This is incredible. I mean, the vibe here this week has been nothing short of electric. You get a chance to spend some time with the players, the coaches, everything like that. Doing media stuff with them has been an absolute blast. It's been exciting. I mean, all of Alouettes Nation is excited for this game. It's been incredible.
And you guys have been working your tail off. I see you posting all the post-game interviews, going to practice. Tim, and obviously you've covered stuff forever.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're not new to the media. But, it's got to be exciting here knowing it's your guys' team here. I mean, I couldn't imagine if the Lions were here on the other side, right?
Oh, no, that's for sure. I think it's giving us a very unique opportunity where we can, cover the Owls the way that we want to cover the Owls. I mean, yeah, it's true. If it were the BC Lions or somebody else, it's true. We would still put the effort into it, so to speak. But it's just fun. I mean, just seeing the players today, even though it was just a walk through, just the fun that they were having and the pictures that they were taking were just I don't know how many of those pictures will be seen by everybody out there, but I mean, it was just so much fun.
What did you think on a scale of 1 to 10 that the Alouettes that we'd be here right now? What was your confidence level at the beginning of the season?
Confidence level at the beginning of the season, I'm very much a wait and see kind of type. So I mean, like, I know a lot of people, it was all doom and gloom, and this team was going to be 10th ranked out of a 9-team league. That's how bad they were going to be. But like, let's see what happens. Like, new ownership, new head coach, a lot of new players. I mean, you just never know. You got to play the games, and that's exactly what the Alouettes did. It was a couple of rough patches here and there, but this team by and large got galvanized, especially once they're adding key pieces like Sean Lemon, Darnell Sankey. Like, those are some major game changers, and the play of those guys has really put this team on another level. So I mean, I'm blown away just how well this team has come together and how pretty much this entire season has galvanized them.
Now, be honest, Tim. How confident were you?
Well, with all honesty, Cliff and I were talking about this a few episodes ago, because we rarely try to make predictions on the pod, but we honestly said that the Owls, at best, we felt could make it a 9-9 season. We really did. But then, especially coming off this offseason that we had, ownership issues, not being able to sign free agents and stuff like that. I mean, it was, you can only be so much of a homer as you can for your home team, but you got to look at it in the right way. We weren't sure. So, a very pleasant surprise. And as I said, the Owls were able to get some pieces that they really that I think was said today that really completed the puzzle, so to speak. But obviously, we'll see what happens tomorrow.
I saw, because I don't do a lot of the other media stuff because we're hanging out. But I saw, like you were saying, the Alouettes walk through, and Moss was doing press today, and so doing press all week. I've been very impressed with him. I had my beanie on over my ball cap during the East. I mean, because I watched that whole game, I was transfixed that entire East final on CFL Plus. What is his mindset right now, and how does he feel going into this? Because it's got to be exciting for him.
I think initially there was a lot of gratitude, like just the feeling like, okay, we are glad to be here, but I think that's been gone. I think now it's a matter of like, yes, we deserve to be here. We are focused. This is what we want to do. This is what we meant to do. And you talk about like even just starting at training camp, that was the focus. Was they talk about they get called the Great Eight as if they're trying to go for their 8th Grey Cup championship. So it's a matter of just go do your job, be great. And this is the result. Like, now we're less than 24 hours away from the Grey Cup being played, and the Montreal Alouettes are in it. And nobody saw this coming. I mean, we had an inkling. Okay, this team's going to do well. This team, there's a potential here. They just got to do the work. Guess what? They did the work, and they shocked a lot of people. And I think Jason Moss has to be, as focused and as internalized as he's been over the past couple of weeks. He's got to be inside. He's got to be like, hell yeah, this is exactly what I said was going to happen, and it's come to fruition.
I think that we noticed today too is that he was trying to take a lot of the emphasis off of him today in the post practice media scrum. He's trying to make sure that get across that it's one team. One team made it this far. One team will continue. He even said, I mean, he's going to go out and be the head coach for 60 full minutes. Or as he said, or forever how long it takes to finish the game. I mean, it's just one. He was just talking about, when it comes to the culture, he's there for the culture of Quebec. He's for the Quebecers, for all of the province, for the 514. It's just so much emphasis, and he's just showing so much gratitude, not only to the organization but to the city itself.
I'll get you. Do you have a question now? Or?
Yeah, I got a question. Yeah. First of all, big fan of the podcast, guys. Like the work you guys do over there. Thank you. I was going to ask, what is the formula for a Montreal Alouettes win tomorrow?
Defense. They say defense.
That would help if I did my job. I'm sitting here.
I'm listening. Defense. I mean, the defense has to play the exact same game they played last week, where they just basically punched Chad Kelly and the Argos in the mouth and did it again. And again, and again. I think you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to contain Brady Oliveira. There's no question about that. This guy is an absolute beast. But they were able to contain AJ Ouellette for the most part. Yeah. So why couldn't you do that to Brady Oliveira? You got to get into Zach Clares' cage. You got to rattle him. Like he's been stunned before. Let's not forget the Elks at one point led 22-0 earlier this season over the Blue Bombers. So there's definitely a lot that can go down. And I think this Alouettes team, if they can stay focused, if Cody Fajardo doesn't try to be the hero too much and he just does the right things. Like I hate using the term game manager, but sometimes you can game manage your way to things. Now, can you game manage your way to a Grey Cup? I highly doubt it. But I mean, if Cody just stays, as we've called them, consistent Cody, and this defense plays like its hair is on fire, I think Montreal could definitely make this a game and come out with a win.
I think for me too, it's looking at there were some improvements that needed to be done. With Cody leading the team in rushing last week. I don't see the team making a game of it, but I get Stanback involved, Antwi involved. It's if those guys get going, we've seen what we've seen what William Stanback can do, especially last year versus Toronto. He's fully healthy this year. Who knows, man? I mean, as I said, just a matter of just getting the running game going too. And, as Cliff and I have been saying all year, even though, Coach Moss has had a history of going away from it, I don't think there's going to be any worry of that this year and on Sunday.
Dorothy's tracking down Baker here, our last guest, and then she'll hop on before we get out. I got a question. We've had a lot of debate about, people saying like Cody Fajardo isn't a number one quarterback, right? And he's fine, replacement level. How do you view him now? And obviously you guys were excited to get him in the offseason. And I know we talked about that, but what have you made of him? And is he going to help elevate them going into the Grey Cup?
I think he realizes what he has in front of him. Like, he's already won a Grey Cup when he was a member of the Argos, but this is his first chance to lead a team in the Grey Cup. I think even talking with him earlier today, like he realizes this moment, and it's something that he's been looking forward to for years and something that he's ready for. And quite frankly, it's going to be exciting to see what he can do, because I think he realizes how important this moment is and he's ready for it. Like, this is something that he's been working towards for a long time. Like, there's the redemption level of things when it comes to his time in Saskatchewan. And I don't think it's necessarily about so much proving them wrong as it's proving himself right, as far as I can do this. I can lead this team to the promised land. So I expect Cody to be able to go out and do that. Like, he doesn't have to be the hero. He just has to play the game that we expect him to. And I truly think with him under center, good things are going to happen for this Montreal Alouettes
He wants
team.
to be one of the misfit toys. That's one of the things he keeps on saying. They're all misfit toys based off of what everybody thought they weren't going to do this year. So I mean, I think I said, it's Cliff just mentioned, consistently consistent Cody. As long as he's that, I think the Owls will be fine.
Final thoughts from you? Anything else you want to share? We got Matt ready to come on. Anything else you want to talk about?
Well, like I say, it's been an exciting week here at Grey Cup. I know Alouettes Nation is excited about the Alouettes. I feel like the rest of Canada too. Everybody outside of Winnipeg apparently is pulling for the Alouettes, which is pretty cool, especially since, like I said, everybody had talked about, oh, this team's going to be garbage. They got no hope, blah, blah, blah. Like, all that noise, that's clearly in the past. Just like what the Alouettes did this season is clearly in the past. Right now, all that matters is what happens tomorrow. And I think this team is really going to shock a lot of people. I'm not guaranteeing a win by any stretch, but I think this game is going to be very competitive, very entertaining. And I truly think Montreal can get the job done.
Yeah, no, I said it's going to be a very interesting game. I'm not into predictions either, but I think it's going to be a fun game. I really do. Who knows what can set off either of these two teams tomorrow? Because if it starts off with another Dequoy pick six, who knows?
Well, and you got our boy James Letcher Jr. now here, right? A superstar of the postseason. I will say, I think there's a very strong, whether it's pro Montreal or anti Winnipeg, or I think that there is a lot of people that want to see Montreal win this for a myriad of reasons. But I think that's exciting.
Oh, definitely, and that's incredible. I mean, it's so funny. Like, the last time the Alouettes were in the Grey Cup was 2010, and it was, I'd say, 7-1 Rider fans versus Alouettes fans in attendance. And once again, Montreal just had to play their game. Like, they knew that they could beat Saskatchewan, and they went out and did it. It was a lot more competitive, a lot more exciting. But that was 13 years ago. Like, now this is a new team, a new era. This is a whole lot of new stuff that really, truly nobody saw coming, and it's going to be exciting. I can't help but be just a little bit excited. I know we're less than 24 hours away from kickoff. This is going to be an absolute gem of a game, win, lose, or draw.
And how to finish off their potential first season for our new owner.
Yeah.
I mean, for Pierre
Must be nice.
Yeah, for Pierre Carpello, who, I can only imagine what he's feeling right now. So, if he's feeling as much as we are in Alouettes Nation, it's hype. It's going to be so much hype tomorrow.
Well, Bone Chance, thank you both for coming. I appreciate it. We'll get Matt Baker in here. Last one, Dorothy Baker, before we get out of here. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it, man. Good to see you, man. All right, let's get in. Matt Baker, the man that maybe will get Evan back in. Evan can hop in. We'll do the musical chairs one last time here. We killed Tim with the mic cables. The man that made this all possible here, Matt, get over here. That's in the hot seat. Get over here. Matt, we're here at the Lions Den first up. Oh, there we go. Jenga, thank you so much for setting all this up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I got you this nice location. The least I could do is get a prime seat. So this is awesome.
That's good. I like your Grey Cup scarf for next year. I assume one of these is coming the Marcast direction, I assume, right?
Yeah, I'm going to have to talk to the person who handles the merchandise, and I might have to put in a special request. But yeah, we can maybe find one for you. Yeah, for those watching, a big part of my role this week.
If I did my job and helped Mike.
Yeah, a big part of my role this week, now that we're not in the game, I'm sure we'll talk about that, is Vancouver 2024. We had a cool little launch in the Lions Den here last night. Commissioner Ambrosi was here, and those watching, supporters of this podcast, supporters of this league, get to Vancouver next year. It's going to be a party.
Yeah, Evan, what are you expecting next year, BC Grey Cup?
No, I mean, I think it's tremendous. You know, part of my family is obviously from Vancouver on my mom's side. Great city, you know, spent a lot of time there. BC Place being, you know, a fantastic venue in the Canadian Football League. I think it's going to be a really fun time. Obviously, you know, this is my first Grey Cup, so, you know, it's been fun so far. And but next year I'll kind of get to weigh it against this one, and, you know, hopefully more in the future. But yeah, ultimately I think it's going to be fun.
Jason, Amar's got a lot of, you know, Hamilton's done good here, but Amar's got a lot to live up to.
Well, you look what they've done with the, you know, the kickoff concerts for the home openers, all the tailgate parties. So I'm really excited to see what they put together for next year.
Yeah, Matt, you know, we see what Amar does on like a normal Saturday game, or, you know, I mean, normal, but like, what do we have expectation levels going into next year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to say other than that. Like, I expect something special. I expect him to try to knock it out of the park. I mean, talking here, yeah, precedent set with LL Cool J, One Republic, home opener concerts. By all accounts, that's going to be an annual thing. So, you know, you see Green Day and Carrie Underwood, and given Amar Doman's connections and his experience with landing some big ticket guests, so to speak, I have to think I'd expect something pretty good. Halftime, weekend performances. Zero inside info at all, but I'm just expecting it to be topped.
People have asked me all day. I keep forgetting to talk. What's Green Day's first song? Predictions for Green. We'll go around here. First song Green Day plays tomorrow, because I didn't think Dan Ralph's getting into the Green Bay set list debate. But what do you want Green Day to play?
My prediction, someone else asked me this. I think Holiday starts it off. It just seems like a natural. I want Basket Case. That's what I want first. But
I figured they play American Idiot just because they make fun of like, hey, you know.
And just make it Canadian Idiot for this occasion. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think it's going to be Holiday that opens up, but I do think they're going to play American Idiot because it's too perfect not to.
Evan?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I'm no Green Day super fan, so some of that might be above my pay grade. But no, I think it's a good choice.
Matt, you know, we, in a different world, this is a different Grey Cup team festival here with a BC. And what did you make of the season and thoughts kind of now that we've been, I mean, obviously we're still kind of in whatever, but post-mortem from the finals.
Yeah, very good season that just had a bad ending. That's simple as that. I mean, considering all the question, remember we were talking at the start of the season, and the question from a lot of your guests that you've had on today already, how are they going to replace Nathan Rourke? How are they going to overcome that? Well, I think it's safe to say the quarterback position is of no concern. I mean, I know Vernon Adams Jr. didn't have his best game last week, but he was obviously a little banged up. Different environment outside. I know I try to downplay it, but the cold weather, the noise, that plays a role for a team that does its best damage inside on a faster track. But I think the pieces are in place. Hey, there's always going to be change. But talking to Neil McAvoy on our podcast today inside here First and Now, it's clear they've prioritized a list of potential guys that they have to get re-signed. Matthew Betts is one of those. Yeah, exciting season. Had some exciting moments, some great individual performances. But at the end of the day, it was Billy Beane and Moneyball who said, if you lose your last game of the season, nobody gives a you-know-what. I'm not going to go that extreme, but I think with time, people will realize it was another special year, but have to get over that hump now.
Yeah, we had talked in Vernon, and it is of any issue that could have been an issue all season. Amazing that Vernon was not that. Talk about Betts taking home some hardware here. How exciting was that for him?
Yeah, very well earned, and was up against some good competition in a Darius Pickett as well. Keep in mind, when you have a team like Toronto, 16-2, a lot of times those guys clean up the awards, and yeah, they got their fair share. Chad Kelly, MOP, much to the chagrin of some of those Winnipeg guys, but it is what it is. But yeah, great player, even better person, and it's funny, he was downplaying it when we kept asking about it, on pace to break that sack record, but that's a special accomplishment, and for that he should be commended. And that's the type of guy, dating back to, and I remember him going through the combine and the draft process, 3rd overall pick, I think it was in 2019. But remember what happened with Edmonton, coaching change. They prioritized different guys. And right from the moment he got here, he was a player we knew had a high motor. That's a saying you hear about him. And yeah, that's he's become a cornerstone.
Jason, any questions?
Well, just to build off the point of Betts, I think that, a couple of years ago, I mean, didn't he have like zero sacks with Edmonton in a starting role? So he kind of got written off a bit, and then he got a big contract in free agency, and he's more than lived up to it. It's crazy. Like if I were to sit there like a couple of years ago, and see where his career has gone, and very highly touted guy coming out of the CFL draft, 2nd overall pick, I do believe. So yeah, I'm just really impressed with what he's done in his career.
Evan, post-mortem thoughts on BC, and then we'll get back to Matt.
Well, I'm going to stand by this statement. I think BC was the most fun football team to watch in the CFL this year, especially offensively. I think with Vernon, the way he was able to distribute the ball. I've been talking about that all season. I think the amount of weapons that they had, it'll be interesting to see, in the offseason how the front office manages, bringing back some of those guys. But ultimately, I think this was an incredibly fun team to watch. It's a shame that they ended up losing to the same team in the same position in the playoffs, being in Winnipeg and having all that. But we can't change that, right? We can only look at what's happened. And, obviously I'm biased, BC, that there's a connection there for me. But, yeah, I mean, this team was great. And there's a lot to build off of. Again, I know it was already brought up, but, yeah, the biggest question, I think, more than anything was how do you replace Nathan Rourke? And they, hats off, again, to BC's front office for not only bringing in Vernon Adams, but bringing them in when they did. They traded for him at the end of that 22 season, and that's paid dividends for him. That looks like another franchise quarterback. And the thing about Vernon is he's found a home there. He played. Well, he's got Washington ties, so he's found a home there. He's not going to pack up and leave like Rourke did, to the NFL, which is fine. We're not going to get into that. But
just to sort of follow up on the geographical aspect of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you saw it. Kudos to Nick Kowalski and Liam Thompson, our video guys. They chronicled this in the offseason. Vernon had basically all the receivers and all the DBs, the skill guys. He hosted them down in Tacoma, Washington, for a little bit of a sort of an impromptu mini camp. He did the same thing when he was in Montreal. He flew out a bunch of Alouettes, and he called it Lion Kings was the name of it. So he's all in with this franchise. I mean, he understands the importance of a starting quarterback on the field, but off the field too. You have to be an ambassador. You have to sell the game, and he's done a great job of all that. His teammates have bought in, really, and it wasn't an easy situation coming in, right? Nathan Rourke doing what he was doing, goes down with the injury. Yeah, nothing but good things to say about him.
Evan, anything else on that?
I don't think so.
Matt, rounding out here the conversation, we're going to bring Dorothy in here, and then we're going to put this show to bed. Final thoughts here, Grey Cup this year, looking forward to next year. Anything else you want to share?
About this game specifically, I'm intrigued by it. I mean, it's always it's an intriguing thing when you have a situation like the Alouettes getting better. And I know the knock on Montreal was, they can't beat the good teams, but they just made a major statement. Say what you want. Did the Argos maybe contribute to their demise? Possibly, but I'm intrigued for this tomorrow. I have a feeling the Blue Bombers, that whole motivation thing for them, they knew they let one slip last year. I think Winnipeg wins it, but it's going to come down to the 3-minute warning. But hey, I would not be surprised if Montreal shocked the world. But I'm excited to see this, see if that Alouette defense, what they can do against Brady Oliveira and that Winnipeg attack.
Well, Matt, I appreciate it. Like I said, thanks again for giving us a good spot here at the Lions Den. I appreciate it. Made our life easy, so I appreciate it, sir.
Well, yeah, third time's the charm. Remember 2 years ago, we were trying to figure out the George Hamilton pub across the street. There was no internet. There was no It was all like rotary phones, and
It was really bad.
And last year, Casino Regina, okay, not bad. It was good, but Lions Den, let's make this the new tradition then.
Yeah, Carolyn said I have a home here anytime, so she's already promised that, so I appreciate it.
Your castle is our castle, or whatever the saying is.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Matt. Thank you. Let's get Dorothy here real quick before the end, and then we'll put this show to bed. Matt, see if you can get my wife over there. Guys, winding down here. We're getting about the 2-hour mark. How are we doing?
Doing good. I mean, longer show than what we usually do, but this is a lot of fun.
A lot of moving pieces here. Dorothy, you've been chatting. What's the sideline report?
Yeah, people are excited. I met some Lions fans, and they're having a good time. So they had an interesting stat. They said whenever the Canucks lose, then that means that the Lions win the Grey Cup. Apparently, it's like
okay.
I don't know.
Well, the Canucks are playing the Kraken tonight, so I hope they lose tonight.
They were banking on them losing. So yeah.
What have you made of Hamilton so far? Jason's wonderful home city.
Yes, I think it's awesome. We went out last night with Jason and had a beer at that Merit Brewing, which was really fun. And yeah, it's been awesome. It's kind of fun to be back in a city that we were at, 2 years ago. So we know some of the same old jaunts and places that we've been. So yeah, and I got some recommends from Alex about places to go. I guess the something park. It's by the beach, Boardwalk Park or something. Anyway, and there's a brewery there, so yeah, it's good.
Third Grey Cup here. Your team have yet to watch a Grey Cup without the Winnipeg in it. Are you excited to see them? Or are you hoping for the Cody Fajardo redemption story here?
Wow, nope, it's not delivery. It's Fajardo. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm definitely go Winnipeg, Caleros and everything. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm just excited to see the game, and yeah, it's gonna be good. It's not as cold as last year. Regina was freezing and snowing, and it's been beautiful. So,
are you excited for Green Day?
Yes, I'm very excited for Green Day.
Yeah, we just bought much more expensive tickets to see Green Day in Seattle here next year, so certainly cheaper here.
That's true. Yes, that's true. Green Day and Weezer.
Well, we'll wind it down here. Jason, anything else from you? And I'll give Evan last year. We'll get out of here. We got a band starting up in here, so it might be a good time to get out of here anyway.
Yeah, nothing much for me. Just a great show today, and really looking forward to the game tomorrow.
Yeah, James here. Great guest, a great list of guests. Mark has better than TS, and I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone watching live today. I know we'll get viewers tomorrow and stuff as well. I appreciate it. Evan, thoughts from you?
I mean, yeah, a lot of great guests, a lot of great opinions. Very interesting to see, everyone's takes. Not everybody's on the same page, even in the league where there's only 9 teams and there's only so many players and awards and things of that nature. But that's what makes the CFL great. It's unique, and I'm sure we'll see that on display tomorrow with the actual Grey Cup.
If you guys are watching this, give it a thumbs up. But like I said, ton of work. Dorothy managing the guests, and Jason spending the time. Evan coming up, and we're. Evan had missed flights and sat at the Houston airport, and then flew overnight to come up. So there's a lot that goes into
Don't get me started.
I saw comments and talking about it's obviously TSN and all of that, but this is a lot of work coming in, and this is unpaid labor, and I just appreciate everyone watching it and all the guests, obviously, and Farhan and Tim and Cliffy, they're still here talking, and Dan Ralph and everyone else. So like I said, make sure you like and subscribe. I'll play this here. We're going to I'll probably go take a shower here, and then we'll get out of here and go party in Hamilton tonight. But I appreciate everyone's time, and we'll see you next time. Go Alouettes, or is that what we're saying here? Go Winnipeg?
Wow. Go Winnipeg.
I just want a good game.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm not going to get too controversial.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.